we don't have anybody in the waiting room. Or, I was going to say, if there's anyone that wants to participate via Zoom tonight, to please use the raised hand function in Zoom. And then I was going to open it up for citizens participation, but I don't see any citizens yet.
Actually, somebody just came in the waiting room.
Okay. We're admitting our waiting room, so hold on just a second.
Okay.
We're good?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, so if there is anyone here for citizens participation, I ask that you use the raise hand function of Zoom. Seeing none, I think we will go ahead and begin tonight. We have our first scheduled appearance is an update on Cadillac paint. I see Ed Hart here, and I know Beth Reynolds is coming as well. So, Ed, do we want to go ahead and get started, or is there something?
Well, I think Beth was going to try to join us, and I think Evan was going to try to join us as well.
Okay, so why don't we'll wait a few minutes and see.
What
Consent?
we
we
could
can do the consent agenda. Yeah. The one thing I wanted to just point out on the consent agenda before we do vote is that I had sent a change to Susan late this afternoon after she had sent out the final packet, and just wanted to let everyone know the change that I had requested under the private development projects. The third paragraph had mentioned the proposed project. I think it was like at 225 Pond Street, and it should be 10 to 60 Main Street. So I had her change that. So,
okay.
So if that sounds good, if I could get a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Motion, well, with the motion to approve the consent agenda with the changes that you noted in the minutes.
Second.
Roll call vote.
Reeves, aye.
Mitchell, aye.
Dare I?
Kinsman, aye. That's 5-0. Great. Okay. We are at 7:03.
Do you want to go into old new business, and we could start just
Yep.
from that and update on private development
Sure,
projects?
we can definitely do that. So let's move on to old new business, update on private development projects. Michael, do you want to
Sure.
give an update?
So last time we met, we talked about a couple projects before the planning board. As far as I know, there's not too much movement on those projects, namely 100 Chestnut Street, 501 Pond Street, and then also 10 to 60 Main Street. So 10 to 60, all three of those are still on the planning board's agenda. I believe two of them will be discussed tomorrow night, 100 Chestnut Street and 10 to 60 Main Street at the planning board meeting. I should say that I do believe the decision is being worked on for 100 Chestnut Street, so there is a little bit of movement on that. One of the things that has happened since our last meeting is there were two forums basically hosted by the developer for a project at the Shaw's Plaza location. So I don't know if any of you were able to be a part of that or jump on that. I know a couple of you were. I was able to go to part of the last one. But it's a collaboration between Eden's, which is the owner of the plaza right now, and then Wynn Development, which is a pretty big developer here in Massachusetts. And Wynn Development is proposing to build 100, I think at the meeting they said between 115 and 130, but I believe their website says 120 apartment units split up into three different income configurations. So 40 units being affordable, and around the 40 to 60% income level. 40 at what they call workforce housing, which is based on 120% of the area median income, and then the other 40 being market rate. What would happen is that Wynn Company would pay, basically they would buy or lease that property from Eden's, that part of the parking lot from Eden's. Eden's would then take that money or a portion of that money and reinvest it into the commercial plaza. So they have talked about Walgreens being interested in expanding a bit. But really, they're talking about landscaping, they're talking about facade improvements, and potentially bringing in another restaurant, like a Panera or something to that effect. So anyway, they did host a couple of forums. I think the feedback that they got, there were a lot of concerns expressed, namely around traffic, around the amount of people that it would bring, and potentially what some of those impacts were. I'd asked Edens to put those forums on the website, on their website for the project. And then I know that they're also planning on compiling an FAQ to answer a lot of those frequently asked questions.
Go ahead, Steve.
So I guess I don't know if it's a dead horse yet, but I keep beating the drum about the fiscal impact component that we have a tool, and I know, or last update I received is that it's getting updated with current information, but I think it's really, really important that we get this operational as soon as possible, given all of these projects, whether they're in permitting stage or whether they are proposed. And we have some capacity as boards, committees, as taxpayers to understand what is the actual impact on this. And I think a benefit to having that is also the fact that we can use this to potentially assess mitigations with developers based on their impact to the community. So I would just ask and encourage that tool get updated as quickly as possible.
Yeah, so I think it has been updated, and what they're doing at the planning board now is discussing that impact tool and questioning in an investigative way some of the parameters that are being used as part of that tool, and making sure that they're the right parameters and the right configuration and the right number. So it has been updated, but I think before it's fully in use, the planning board would like to have an opportunity to maybe make some modifications to it if it seems necessary.
Okay, it just, it would be a shame to have projects permitted without the community having that information to make an assessment on. So I guess I would encourage the planning board to, move that along as quickly as possible.
I agree with that.
Rob, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, fiscal impact, that's a good thing to remember. I just, Mike, thanks for reporting that. I was not able to attend that forum or the forums. I'm just curious, where in that parking lot are they proposing to put that building? Is it like, what's the locus of it? Is it just right out front there by 126 or tucked away or?
No, so if you look at that, plaza, Rob, the south side of that is really all parking space, and so they're proposing to put it there.
We're near the bank.
The bank, yes. And one thing I do want to clarify that I haven't clarified is that they have not submitted an application to the planning board yet. So I think that's a really key piece of information.
So this is just a discussion phase at this point?
Right.
Okay.
And the website that they have, do you know the web address?
shawsmarketplaza.com.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else have any? Joe, go ahead.
With respect to the development agreement and things that need to be addressed, I would also like to see some of these developers put money towards our sidewalk funding account. Seeing that we'll have a lot more people utilizing the sidewalks, it's going to become the town's responsibility to put those sidewalks in at some point along these routes, especially like Chestnut Street, some of those areas where there aren't any. So I'd like to make sure that if the planning board's listening, they may want to entertain adding that to their list of things that they should be willing to ask for.
Joe, could I ask you to, you don't have to repeat that, but kind of make sure the mic's closer to you?
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, I just didn't want to
12 inches.
blast off.
12 inches.
12 inches.
So,
That's good. That works for me.
Okay. All right.
That works for me.
Does anybody else have, Yolanda, go ahead.
I just want to, I second what Steve said regarding the development agreement. I mean, not the development agreement, the tool in regards to looking at, and I think I actually had a conversation with a planning board member, and they are looking at it, and they are looking to get it used, because they see it as a tool as well, so.
Good.
All right,
Okay.
thank you.
So we can go back to the,
Yeah, is there anything else that you wanted to add on under private development projects, or you?
no, just, I would encourage everybody to look at the planning board agendas and, make sure that if you see something of interest there, that you take the time to attend if you can.
And all these projects are still undergoing their public hearings, so depending on where they are in the process, the planning board will still take comments.
Correct.
Final comments about it. All right, thanks. So why don't we go ahead? It is, we're 7:11. I see Evan White has joined us too. So we have today an update on Cadillac Paint. We have Ed Hart here, Beth Reynolds, our Economic Development Director, and Evan White, our engineer. I think it was about a little over a year ago, I don't know, COVID has done weird things with time frames, but that you had presented to us all the work that you had done. You had really, spearheaded this whole process to with your neighbors at the former Cadillac Paint site, and we had done some of the work to take down the fence and remediate the property. But so I know you guys have been hard at work coming up with like a real kind of design and plan, and we're excited that you're here to share where this is going and timelines as well. So Ed, do you want me to turn it over to you? Do you have like a presentation for us, or do you want to talk through what your plan is, or Beth?
Yeah, I think first of all, it would be good for Ed and Yolanda to just kind of explain some of the public input that they've had as part of this and how that helped shape this plan that we're about to put up on the screen.
I'll start as Ed comes to the microphone. So this project, as we all know, I remember one of our first meetings back when Tony Schiavi was our town manager. And there was an event held outside of the park, or what could be the park, with the neighborhood. And then we used the funding, we got the buildings down. As the buildings were going down, Ed reached out to his neighbors and did a survey, because there was conversation, well, maybe this could be a good location for the dog park, because that conversation was going on. And with feedback from the neighbors, it was decided, no, that's not what they really want to see there. They want to see more of a walking park, try to keep it as natural as possible, but make it a place for people in that neighborhood to be able to go and walk. And I'm going to hand it over to Ed to do the rest.
Yes, we did 2 surveys, you're right, and the first one I think was in 2018, and I have the results here. It was over half of the, neighborhood walking park was about 26%, pollinator garden with the walking paths 31%, field of wildflowers 7%, and it went on like that.
I think you're muted.
Oh, am I?
Make sure the green light is on that microphone.
Oh,
Okay. 12 inches.
where is it now?
No, you're good.
You're
Just
good.
talking to the
It just
microphone.
looks like he's muted on Zoom.
Was it not working?
I see a mute on the, I think it's muted on the
Well, I
internet.
think the laptop is muted, but as long
Okay.
as the microphone is on.
Okay,
Yes,
yeah,
Susan,
it's
can
on.
you hear, Susan? Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
Do you want me to repeat anything?
No, I think you're
Okay,
good.
okay. So, like I said, it was pretty overwhelming that people wanted something passive, a garden, a walking park, and then COVID hit. A lot of things happened, but then COVID hit, and everything slowed down. And now we're back on track, and I thank the Board of Selectmen and Mike for not taking your eye off the ball. This is a marathon, not a sprint. And we've been doing this for 28 years. That's how we started fighting Cadillac Paint. And now we're, in the home stretch. And I have recently had the pleasure of walking the park with 3 experts in plant science and in this area. First was Kathy Rooney, and she gave us a lot of time. One day we walked, she had identified all the invasives and a number of saplings, identifying some trees, and giving me some input on what could work on the site and what might not. I think it was the week later, I walked it with Mike Jones, who was on the Forest Committee, and he was also very helpful. He's a landscape architect, and he repeated a lot of what Kathy has said and gave me some ideas on soil conditions and what would grow there. And then last Sunday, last but not least, was Nick Novick, who was a wealth of information. And he spent 2.5 hours with me walking the site. And this is what Nick does for a living. And he had all kinds of excellent suggestions. And I had done some reading on this in the past couple of years of how to create a pollinator garden. And Nick made me realize how little I didn't know, how much I didn't know, how little I did know. And he was perfectly willing to donate his time and expertise and suggestions and opinions onto our path forward. And he left me with a saying that I added to my catalog of sayings. In construction, you pick them up. The one that everyone knows is measure twice, cut once. Another one is you buy the best, you only cry once. If you don't, you cry every time you look at it. And then another good one is it's always cheaper, faster, and easier to do things the right way. Well, Nick has another saying, and it's you can have a quick failure or a slow success. And when it comes to this, it takes years to establish a good, sustainable pollinator garden with native plants that the pollinators, the insects, the birds, and other animals can enjoy as well as people can. It's self-sustainable, and it will continue on, but it's nothing that you can do quickly. You can, there are methods to go out there and throw seeds out. Yolanda and I discussed this. And there are then there are the right way to do things. And right now, the land is invaded with a number of invasives. One was mugwort and bittersweet. Most of these can be handled quite easily, but it's a little bit more involved than I originally thought. And I think that in the future, we perhaps should sit down with Nick or somebody like Nick and let them give their input and their suggestions as to how to proceed with this. You don't want to try to compete with some of these invasives, because you won't succeed. You have really, basically, we have to find a way to get rid of them. This is the long and the short of it. But also, in the meantime, we could create the paths, the parking area, the crosswalk. There's an awful lot of things that we can do right now, and some grading, some filling in, and then maybe next year, maybe in the spring, planting. I don't know. This isn't my area. This is something that's like Nick does this for a living. And he sent me something, in closing, if you'll permit me, like, can I read 8 sentences of something that he wrote? Okay. 'Cause
We say a lot more than 8 sentences here.
It's only 8. Grasses are an essential part of a meadow ecosystem. They function to provide texture, structure, long-term stability, visual cohesion, diversity, winter interest, and food sources for birds. Flowers provide nectar and larval sources for insects and color throughout the season. The seed mix can be varied somewhat across the site to accommodate changes in soil conditions, sun exposure, etc., and to provide for some variation in species distribution. Plant communities and meadows are inherently dynamic systems which will change and evolve over the years. In ecological terms, meadows represent a sear, a stage in ecological succession. Part of the intent of the ongoing management of the meadow is to arrest succession, which would normally transition the meadow to a woodland over time. But even the meadow sear of stage is a progression from early stage, which is 1 to 3 years, to mid-stage, 3 to 6 years, and the later mature climax stage, which can be 6+ years. Some plants act as initial site colonizers and stabilizers and will eventually dwindle in number, giving way to middle and longer-term species. And that's when it's sustainable and we can just enjoy it and basically maintain it. So that's my input. We had a number, Yolanda and I discussed a number of different paths, structures. We picked one, I think I saw, it was on that map right there, which is fine.
Yep.
It's pretty close to what everybody else was. We're thinking about maybe some benches along the way for people to want to sit down. We'd also discussed, I discussed with Joe, maybe dedicating one of the benches to one of the neighbors. There's a couple of people in the neighborhood that have passed on. Sally Lawrence was one of them. And she was very active back in the 80s, trying to work to get rid of Cadillac paint. And there's a number of other suggestions that people have made that we can discuss in the future, but that's basically it.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Thanks, Ed. And I want to point out that for invasive management, we have a very good resource here with our conservation agent, Becca Solomon. So I would encourage, want to be conscious of her workload, but she's definitely a great resource, and that's one of the things that is her goals is invasive management townwide.
Yep.
So based on this input and based on Ed and Yolanda's efforts and the others that you've mentioned, Beth Reynolds has actually been working on basically getting the site surveyed, getting some of the preliminary work done. And then Evan White has taken all of that information and all of that input and has actually worked in, as our town engineer, has designed a plan. And Beth, I don't know if you want to say a little bit about what exactly the work that you've done as part of this process, and I can turn it over to Evan.
Sure, yep. So in order to get the site ready for the work that will hopefully be done here, we had to do a few things. So there was a fence there for a long time that had all kinds of overgrown bushes and weeds and whatnot. So we had the fence removed. We had a lot of trash and debris and things that had just collected over the years removed. And then we do have, Nobis is coming in to secure the site now, because we did have drilling wells there for testing of the soil. So we will cap those off, send that report out to the state to really close off that, that piece of the project, so that we can get it ready for the next phase.
And I hope, actually, just as an aside, I hope what Beth's talking about and what she describes kind of gives you an idea how complicated some of these things can be. Some of those things that look very, very simple on the surface, there's all of these little pieces that have to work and move forward. So, you know, thanks for explaining that, Beth. And then, Evan, what do you want to go through your plan? Do you want me to put it up on the screen and let you go through it?
Sure. I have it here. I don't know if I can share mine, but
Let me try this here. And then that way we can still see you.
okay. All right. So this is the plan as it is right now. You know, a couple of goals I had going into this was ADA compliance. As you can see, we do have one ADA parking spot. You know, the site itself, for the most part, is pretty flat, but I did try to avoid some areas on the trail system. Again, with the goal of remaining ADA compliant. We do have a crosswalk at the corner of Nancy and Elliott. That's going to come with the solar flashers and an ADA compliant crosswalk on the other side, or curb cut rather, on the other side of the Elliott Street. Very minimal, you know, site work here. Just some filling over by the cul-de-sac area. There's a small amount of area that needs to be filled there just because of the dip. Again, with the goal of trying to remain ADA compliant. You know, I since I started work on this, I've actually had Becca Solomon go out to the site, and she started flagging a number of invasive species. She also gave me kind of like an overview of what's on the site, what she noticed as invasives, where they are. She also kind of gave me some advice on just, you know, what kind of native plants and wildflowers will do good on this type of site. I know Ed was saying he's talked to a number of other people about that, but I have that information as well. Yeah, the crosswalk itself, right now I'm proposing just dense grade with a binder, 6 inches deep, 5 feet wide. You know, pretty simple stuff. And you know, the goal here for me is to, you know, stay away from the stormwater management permit and you know, site plan review as well. Does anybody have any questions?
I was going to say, so Steve, go ahead.
So, well, Evan, thank you. Great work on this plan. And of course, you know, Ed, you've been doing this for so damn long. But I do, before I ask my question, I just wanted to acknowledge and thank, you know, Kathy and Mike and Nick for their input. I got to meet Nick a number of years ago related to Warren Woods, as I recall, and whether we could do in-ground gardening there or we needed to do raised beds gardening because of the prior use of the land. But, thank you to those three. So timeline, kind of time frame for process and so on, realizing that the growth part is not, a meadow in a can.
Yeah.
But how about the path and the parking area and kind of that infrastructure?
That can happen now. That could happen now. I mean, you could work on the parking area right now, the crosswalk, the paths even. I know there are certain conditions on ADA compliance, I think on width, 5 feet wide if I'm not wrong, and also the type of slope, the maximum slope of 2%, I think, 2 degrees. And perhaps even the type of substance that you have to use for the path so that people can navigate it properly. But other than that, I mean, these are things that you can get started on now, especially, and then, grading and filling in low areas. But that's the area where we gotta ask some experts when it comes to grading and treating the invasives. And that's the one thing, I've heard people say, well, you can plant, the best time to plant is in the fall, after the first killing frost. And that's true, that happens in nature. But in this might be too soon to hit it this fall. Might have to have spring planting. And Nick went through the difficulties involved in each season planting it, but it's doable. It's just, it requires a different approach.
Okay.
But somebody like Nick or any of the other plant scientists, plant experts, it'd be well worthwhile to ask them and see what they say, because they're a wealth of information, and there's a couple of right ways to do it, and there's a lot of wrong ways to do it.
Yeah. So, that being said, is at the end of this presentation, is the expectation that we endorse this plan and then and move forward with it?
Yes.
As presented?
Yes, and I mean, we can start working on this and moving forward with some of this, but I think first of all, we have to finalize, the design, get some of the things tweaked that we need to tweak, make sure that we're okay from a permitting standpoint. Some of this work, we'll have to decide whether we do it in-house or if we're going to go out to bid and do that. So it might take a little while to get this done, just kind of in the midst of everything else that we're working on.
Okay.
I had only one comment, and that was, and this is not my area of expertise, I'm sure that was it the crosswalk committee or that had traffic safety committee had worked this out, but I thought that the crosswalk would be at that bend, only because you can see.
Line of sight.
Line of sight, right, 150 feet. Whereas where that is, it's not that good looking to the west. It's fine looking to the east, but I mean, I cross the street a lot there, and you can do it, but you gotta scramble because the cars come down that road pretty quick. At that bend, you can see in both directions, and the cars can see you too. That's why I was wondering why the committee chose that site, but that's just from my experience living there,
Sidewalks.
Oh,
As far as that goes, the original place I had the crosswalk was actually at the,
at the bend, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
right where Michael's putting it there.
Yep.
And just going out in the field and doing a visual check on it, the line of sight was much better where it is now at Nancy and Elliott. I do have to do a little more work on that, to make sure that we're compliant.
I know where
but-
you're going, Ed. I know where you're going. I was part of that traffic study committee meeting, and if I may, Madam Chair, with respect to that, there was another discussion with respect to that, and that was to put the entryway to the park on Nancy Drive, to eliminate that turn-in on Elliott Street where you have that real sharp corner, because that's where, and then you have Sheffield coming down. So the whole idea was to make it a little bit easier and safer, is to put your entryway on the Nancy Drive aspect off the Nancy Drive. And no, Evan, you were part of that discussion. I don't know if,
Yeah,
if you looked at
the
that.
only thing that I was concerned about is I'm right at the cusp as far as impervious area for triggering a stormwater management report. So I was looking into that, doing an entrance over there, but I do think that it's going to put me over.
Yeah, I think the entrance is the right spot where it is right now, the entrance into that parking area. And I understand what you mean about the crosswalk. It's doable, just from my position. I think best that turn, only because you get a line of sight is longer.
Yeah.
But because there's a sidewalk there and, Oh, can I add one more thing?
Go back up to the mic, because
I don't want to, I'm sorry to hog the microphone here, but there was one other thing that and I've talked to Steve about this, I think I talked to Mike about this too. The speed limit sign in Sherburne. You know about that, Joe?
I do.
That is so popular and it works. And if you're gonna put a speed limit sign there, use one like that. They had it, especially in Christmas time, they had naughty when you're going too fast and nice when you hit the speed limit. And people were slowing down just to see
Downtown
the
Sherburne,
nice.
that's pretty
It
funny.
worked. And I talked to the police in Sherburne and they'd laugh too. It's effective.
It does work.
Yeah.
So one thing I want to mention before the board takes a vote, that it's kind of a big deal, but I don't think we necessarily had the time to ruminate on it. But Ed has also been successful in this parcel that I'm outlining here. This is actually a separate parcel from Cadillac Paint. That's owned by Bob Schiavi. And Ed has actually been successful in talking with Bob and getting him to agree to gift that land to us. So that's actually going to be part of the town meeting warrant, is the acceptance of that land.
Okay.
So,
Yolanda?
So just a couple of comments in regards to, you said that you put the crosswalk where you did because of sidewalk? I mean,
Sidewalks.
there's sidewalk all the way to the Ashland town line, right?
No.
On the one side of Elliott, there's a sidewalk all the way to the town line.
It's broken up, though.
Yeah,
You
that's-
can walk
that's
from
correct. It's on the
126
north side of
all the
Elliott.
way to the Ashland town line on a sidewalk on Elliott Street. So I would think moving the crosswalk back to where, I mean, I've stood there a couple times with Ed, and when you stand where it's that bend, you can see better. So I would just say if we could review that. And then second, in regards to, you're looking to put the entrance on Nancy Drive, even though we're getting that parcel, we would have to remove some of the brick wall. It would,
Right.
I think it would make it difficult.
Okay.
On the Nancy Drive side, there's, not brick wall, there's a stone wall the first 20 feet or so, and then there's a break, and that path could be made to walk in, but to try to make that driving entrance to the park off of Nancy, I don't think makes
It's over
sense.
40 feet, and that's the width of a roadway,
so
so.
maybe as a solution to this, and Evan, do we have the ability to get somebody like GCG to just take a quick look at this
Yeah.
Yeah,
and
that'd be
provide a
good.
recommendation?
Yeah, that's definitely doable.
That's
Sounds
fine.
good. I have one question before we kind of move on. The budget for this, so there was money set aside for Cadillac
85,000.
Paint.
I think.
Where are we with all of that? I know we took down the fence and everything else.
I think we have about 90,000 left after the survey, after the fence. This is an opportunity to express our thanks to Representative Lewis and Senate President Spilka for, getting us some funding for this project.
Okay. So we feel like that the 90,000 we have left will cover,
We'll see.
okay.
If not,
Fingers
what do I
crossed.
always say?
Oh,
We'll make it
one
work.
last thing. The other thing that had been talked about is, as you're looking at the plan, there's that smaller loop that goes up to the back of the property. That's through the woods. The idea was that that would not be the same material as the ADA section that sort of does a loop, that would be maybe more natural or stone, and so that the bigger loop would be ADA compliant from the parking lot once around, to keep that more natural into the woods and keep as much woods and natural as possible. So I want to make sure we are all understanding and hopefully agree to that, because I think it'll just make the park a little bit better.
All right, sounds good.
All natural.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments? I can't see Rob, so I don't know if Rob.
No, I think it sounds great. I just had a question. Are we voting anything or funding for town meeting or anything, or just kind of saying this plan looks good?
Yeah, just basically a vote endorsing this plan and moving forward.
I move that we endorse the Cadillac Paint Park plan that has been presented.
Can I get a second?
Second,
Roll call vote?
Greaves, aye.
Mitchell, I.
Sure,
Kinsman, aye. Passes 5-0, so
Awesome.
Thanks, Ed.
Thank
Thank
to
you all
Ed,
for your work.
Thank you, Yolanda
Thank
and
you,
Evan.
Beth. Thank you, Evan.
Beth.
Yeah.
Great work.
Yeah,
Great
thanks,
work.
everybody.
So we look forward to seeing this start to come together.
Maybe a ribbon cutting in the spring.
Great.
Oh,
Those are always fun.
fingers crossed.
Fingers
Fingers
crossed.
crossed.
All right, sounds good.
In the future, who should I be talking to? Talk to Evan? If there's any changes or suggestions or input?
I think Evan and Beth,
Evan and Beth, okay.
yeah,
Okay.
so,
Okay.
perfect.
All right, great. Okay, thank you, Evan, for being here tonight, too.
Did you want me to stay?
Oh, no problem. Thank you for having
Wait
me.
for Valentine.
So moving on in our agenda, our next appointment is an update on 433 Chestnut Street. I see Mr. Paul Gustafson here today. Do you want to give us just a quick update since, I mean, you were here 2 weeks ago. Mr. Gustafson's working on the Hall House at 433 Chestnut. We had talked to him 2 weeks ago about the work that he's doing and the sort of where things are kind
Situation?
of yeah, we could call it a situation. So, Mr. Gustafson, I know last time you were here, we had talked about you were in the middle of trying to get a survey into the town, a stamped survey, and do you want to come up and just kind of give us an update on where things are? Okay. Thank you for coming back for another round today. Okay.
Another
I didn't bring the,
round
I
two.
didn't bring the Kevlar vest. I
No.
don't need it.
Nope, no, that won't be necessary.
All right, I'll hold you to that.
Okay.
So, in terms of an update, work progresses, and we're almost to the point of putting on the ridge and the rafters, and it's really coming together pretty well. Windows are being delivered, and windows will go in probably next week. So things are cranking along. I was able to retain the original surveyor that surveyed for the town, Joe
Markadon.
Durow, I think his name is, from Hopkinton. So he has been out to the site. His recommendation was wait until the ridge was up. He took some sightings with laser and all that, so he's prepped to do it. He just hasn't been able to do it yet. So he did verify my tape measure type of thing, but he'll have the official one soon. So I have someone on it. So the original person, since he did the site survey, the subdivision, the A to B, change of land with Warren Center, he's the most familiar and has all the data already. So it made sense to go with him.
So that's in regards to the height.
The height, yeah, just to make
Okay.
sure we stayed. The architect had measured a height of the original building of 25 feet, 10 inches from the point, the peak, ridge of the roof, down to top of retaining wall. The retaining wall top is still there, painted the rock orange so it wouldn't get disturbed. And now we have a surveyor coming in, which will probably do a little bit more accurately than what the architect did. I'm not sure how he did it when he went out to the site and did his existing conditions. But anyways, he's gonna give us an idea where it is and hopefully stay within that 2-foot allowance for the height increase.
Do you want to talk about sort of where we are and where we're going?
Yeah, so, obviously, based on the discussion we had a couple of weeks ago, we identified areas that we felt were not consistent, I think, with the preservation restriction. And so what we've committed to do is try to find a way to work forward and try to basically get back on track in terms of achieving our goals of making this a historically important, recognizably historically important building. So what I've done is I've identified a couple of ideas that maybe we could move forward with. I have put that in a letter that I have put together to the board. What I would like to do tonight is discuss that letter. Paul's here to provide some comment. Just in full disclosure, Paul and I have talked about this letter. And if
So he has seen this.
he has seen this.
Okay, good.
And basically, if we can come to an agreement tonight, I can go ahead and make any changes if necessary, and we could send this letter and get back on track. So just going through the bullet points that I had put there. So first of all, the first and most important thing is to cease and desist any work that damages or removes any historical materials from the home. That's number one. So essentially stop the bleeding. Second, I had hire a historical preservationist to redesign the interior and exterior of the home to incorporate the remaining original material into final finishes. So examples include incorporating lumber as exposed beams and the creation of built-in shelves and cabinetry. I go on to talk about providing dates where the board would require documentation that that preservationist was hired, and then also a date by which the new plans showing that incorporation into the finishes, when that needs to be received. One of the things that Paul and I have talked about is a preservationist really the right person, and how do you classify a preservationist? Potentially what might be better here is an architect who has experience with historical preservation. What might be a little bit more appropriate. And if you don't mind, I'll just go through the other points too, and then we can go back. Third is purchase and place prominently on the property a kiosk. So in the style of those found at Warren Woods, documenting the history of the property, and it's important to Ashland. And that kiosk and its location will be subject to approval by Select Board. We talk about the Warren District a lot, and how this is part of the Warren District. So I think consistency with signage would help tie in everything into the Warren District. And then finally, contribute $20,000 to the Ashland Historical Commission for the creation of a historic property survey. So this is, obviously we've lost a lot of historic integrity as part of the home. So while we can't necessarily go back and erase this, what we could potentially do is work with the Historical Commission to make sure that other properties are on the inventory and they're up to date and things of that nature. So, you know, those are my recommendations or my thoughts. So surely, you know, open it up to the board or Paul's thoughts, or
Let's open it up to the board first, and then we'll
Sure.
come back to you, Paul. Steve?
So, just a couple of comments. Paul, you have an architect of record, correct?
I had an architect, yes, that
You-
designed a replication of the house once, and then we threw that away in favor of the town's request after the bid was won to save as much of the building as possible and renovate it. So that architect did both of those drawings.
So, is same architect?
Same architect.
Okay.
Yep.
So I guess my question is, why would we necessarily require Paul to, let's say, hire a special architect? Is it possible that the architect you have can incorporate these components that the board is looking at?
It's possible, yeah, I can speak with him about it. I mean,
Okay,
I know he's got a track record of working with a variety of different buildings, including you know,
Okay.
older homes, antique homes.
So that would be,
So he's creative, I like him like that. so.
okay. And so he may or may not, I mean, but that would be my
So I
question,
would-
whether it's necessary to hire now another party to review it. So that's one comment. And then the second comment I have is regarding the kiosk. I think the kiosk is important. My question is, you know, it's, at some point, people are going to be living on that property. So how do they come onto private property at that point and to view a kiosk? So I think location is pretty important here. So just a comment on that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate those concerns, I share that as well.
Thank you.
Anyone else have questions or comments? Yolanda?
Just to follow up on Steve's, I guess, you know, the difference between a historical preservationist and a historical architect and the architect you have, I guess I'd want to see if the architect that is already working with Paul is someone who, yes, they might have worked on historic homes, but has that been to preserve and reuse materials? Because I'm not looking for him to have to find somebody, but certainly the idea is we're trying to save as much of this home, historic, the historic parts of it as possible. As I look at this, part of me is like, we're closing the barn door
Door
after
after
the
horses.
horses left, but we're doing what we can and we're trying to work with you. So, whereas I don't know that he needs to hire a historical preservationist, but before taking this completely out or rewording it, I would want to see the credentials or find out what your architect has done in regards to reusing materials from other homes, before we take this completely out. That's the only thing I would have to say. And in regards to the kiosk, we knew that this home was going to become private property and that people would be able to get into, the idea was that, once a year or twice a year, people would be able to go into the private property to see it. That's one of the things we talked about. So I agree, placement of a kiosk would make, we need to just look at that. Yep.
Joe or Rob? No, you're good? You good, Rob?
Yeah, that's good. And I just think, so, Michael, you and, he's agreed to this, proposal, pretty much. There's no, issues left to resolve.
Well,
We'll ask Paul
Yeah.
in just a second.
Perfect lead-in, Rob.
Do you have question, more comments?
No, that's fine, thank you.
Okay, all right. And my only comment is basically, piggybacking on what Yolanda and Steve said, I think whatever the expert is that can best incorporate elements of the historic nature of this house, whether it's an architect or a preservationist, but we're looking for something that brings that back to the house. So whatever mechanism that, I'm okay giving latitude to whoever that person would necessarily be, but I think we would want to see what that proposal looks like, just so we know what can be done and what they're looking to do, and make sure that it's kind of in the spirit of what we're trying to accomplish.
Sure. Yep.
So,
No new surprises.
yeah, so, but do you want to offer some comments?
Yeah,
or-
absolutely, thank you. Just to back a little bit to something that Yolanda mentioned, it was discussed previously that people would be allowed into the property several times a year. Did I hear that correctly?
I don't think that was in the preservation restriction.
No, it's not.
I think it was talked about.
Okay.
Like into the building?
I remember conversation that when we owned the property, and as we were looking, we had talked about that if there was ever like a historic homes tour, this house would be part of it, so that people could go in and see the historic Warren home. If I'm don't remember, or if it didn't get in the document, then shame on me for not encouraging that. But I remember a conversation that said this would be available
Yeah,
for people to go in and see it.
yeah, I don't remember that specifically, but I have read the document, and I don't,
Okay.
not in there.
Paul, would you be open to that? Like once or?
If I continue to own it, possibly, yeah, but I don't, number one, it's not in the preservation agreement. In fact, the preservation agreement doesn't cover anything about the interior of the home, only the exterior of the home. So we're sort of going outside of, we talk about the interior and getting an architect involved. I'm fine with that, but it's sort of outside of the preservation agreement. And there's certainly nothing in there about, being able to go in, the town or the public to view the inside of the house on a periodic basis, unless I totally missed it, but I'm pretty sure I've read it pretty carefully at this point.
Yeah, you've probably reviewed it a few times.
Yeah, so, but, if I own it, and possibly, it's, the interior is, it's stripped to the studs and rebuilt with sheetrock, and there really was nothing, architecturally unique about the interior of the house. There was no ornate staircases with nice newel posts you might see in some homes. The kitchen was a 1950s kitchen. The bathroom was, 1930s. It wasn't, nothing in there was original. Some horsehair plaster. So, the interior, which was a a blank slate as far as the preservation restriction indicated. I don't know whether there's anything really interesting to see on the inside.
Okay.
So anyways, but, I think maybe we talk about it later. I don't want to get too sidetracked, so.
Okay.
So I did get the letter. Thank you for being able to review it. I agree in principle to the three things that are being asked. First of all, though, I don't say object, but I think the tone of the letter was a little bit negative. It spoke of violations. I still feel I was doing what was said in drawings that were approved by the town, but, that ship has sailed. In spirit of cooperation and moving forward, I just want to look at, how do we make everyone happy, the town, the board, moving forward with this project. And I feel like the letter doesn't have that sort of tone to it, but I'm willing to donate to the Historical Society for the survey that they want to do to some extent. The cease and desist as far as removing materials from the home, that ship has sailed. I mean, the home is being reconstructed at this point, so that's not an issue. However, there is the open issue of a porch. The farmer's porch is in horrible state. The only thing original about it is the roof. The floor, it was reconstructed probably 30, 40 years ago out of plywood. The joists are very, there are multiple joists and other things underneath it that are holding it together, which are ready to fall through. So the bottom of it needs to be rebuilt. The railings and the columns are, probably around the same time. They're just, 2 6x6 posts wrapped in pine, and you've got 2x4s for railings. So it really is nothing there. So what I propose, and again, I'm getting into too much detail here, but basically I agree to not taking anything apart, but we do need to talk about the porch and how to do that properly and in the spirit of the preservation restriction. So as far as, there's a lot of neat things that we're already doing to the house on the exterior. Some of the unique things on the outside of the house were those corbels, the brackets that hold up that front roof. The roof was gone, was shot. It's gonna be rebuilt exactly. We're gonna reconstruct the look of the front door. The front door is saved, but it's thin, it's not insulated. It's a multi-panel, a 5-panel door, horizontal door, and the panels are a 1/4 inch thick. So, the wind will just blow through those. But I like to try to find a similar door and replicate that whole front entry, because I think the facade of the building is very important. And we have already reconstructed the moldings, the fascia, the soffit, the roof rakes, the rake returns that come back left and right on the roof. So we've tried to, mimic exactly what was there, including the crown molding that was on it. And we're gonna do that all around the house as well. But those corbels are gonna be in the process of being stripped down, sanded, repainted, and put back up again. So they're really, really cool. It's probably the neatest thing about the house. So in the rest of the house would be sided, new windows put in, new shutters put on the front. So we're gonna do all that on the exterior. That was always the plan. I did save quite a bit of lumber. There's a lot of really wide pine planks. There's probably, 20 or so of the old studs from the back half of the house that we salvaged. There's a number of joists, which are about 6 inches by 4 inches. The studs are like 4 by 4, and a lot of sections of wide pine that they used, planks they used on the outside of the house. So I got a good inventory of that at the location. Now that the house is almost weather tight, I'm gonna get that stuff inside the house so it's more protected. And it was my intention, by looking at that it would be neat to sort of incorporate a lot of that into the house. When you look at the inside of the house, looking with all the old horsehair plaster gone, you see all the horizontal planks. You still see that now at the house on the outside. Somehow recreate that on the interior. Take some of the old studs, and you go into homes, you see the sheetrock, and you see some of the old wood protruding outwards.
Yep.
Going vertically up and down. You can do that in door openings. We normally have a sheetrocked opening. There's no door there, but it's a passage from one room to the other. To maybe trim that out in those 2x4s or in other key locations throughout the house, both in the old part and in the new addition on the back. There are some longer pieces that maybe we can put into the ceiling as just sort of an accent. I don't want to have, I don't think we have enough to do, multiple, throughout a whole living room, do multiple pieces of it, but certainly like in the corners, or going up the walls, and then that's doable as well. And then the other thing I was thinking about was, it's a pretty modern thing nowadays, you see all the time, is not just the barn door type doors, but that are made out of old boards, but just accent walls that are done in the old planking. So there's a really, I think, a good location for that, very strategic, in the front original part of the house, which is now open. It'll be like a living room, I guess, where the entranceway comes through. Doing something between the two windows in the front with that sort of lumber, maybe each side bookcased or bookended with the older studs. So a lot of good ideas that I've researched. I have other people looking into it. My feeling is, it's not rocket science. I know we want to replicate, we want to be historically authentic, but if we're using this stuff in a new addition or putting it back into the house, we know where it came from the inside of the house. We're just going to put it back in and have the sheetrock go up to it and expose it. Hiring a preservationist or an architect, I think might be overkill. I don't know whether anyone is interested in doing that. However, I think, with the minds we have in this room, I put some stuff together, get some pictures offline about other projects and photographs and maybe prototype or mock up some stuff and bring it in as a presentation, and we can all agree and work on what that might look like. So,
What are you doing for flooring?
so hardwood flooring,
Okay.
yeah. I would like to go something, not your, strip flooring 3.5 inches, but something a little bit more, in line with the period.
Are
Maybe-
any of the planking that you're talking about, because one of the big things is they used to do wide pine flooring.
Yeah.
Is any of the wood that you pulled out wide pine flooring, or could it be used for that? If not, certainly in the whole house, from what you're saying, the front room, or, the oldest, where,
Yeah.
what would be the original front room?
Yeah, it's funny, I called a lot of different companies to see if they were interested in doing some salvaging of the part, the rear part of the house, and I couldn't get anyone interested in it.
Yeah.
A lot of work. But what I was told, I learned a lot, and what I was told was, they can't be that old, they can't be warped or twisted
Right.
or cracked, and a lot of that is, they
Okay.
insulated the house a number of years ago. They basically cut 2-inch holes in and blew in insulation. So I got a lot of pieces that have, and they did it like every
Oh,
2 to
wow.
3 feet. So every other, wide pine, so every other board had a hole going through it.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but anyways, but the inside of the house, I'm hoping to kind of incorporate, a more, I guess, more period type flooring. Not
Okay.
your traditional, like we might see in a Fafford condo, but more wider and more authentic. So,
So it sounds like you've been thinking about this
been thinking about
for 2 weeks now.
So been thinking about this for 2 years now. About this project.
But I think what you're talking about is exactly what we're trying to accomplish with this. So whether, I personally am fine if you come to us with sort of an outline of how this is gonna happen, whether it's like whatever inventory you have and how it's gonna be used. I'm comfortable not necessarily having you reach out to a preservationist or someone if you come to us with a plan and we review it and kind of go through it together, and the farmer's porch and the, it sounds like, I drove by today and it looks great. Like it's coming together.
Yeah. It's big and green, but it'll
It is
change.
big and green, but it won't be green forever. But, I think, we want to work with you to have a really great project. But we also want to make sure that this stays historically significant. So, Steve?
Yeah, I agree. I think if you're able to come back, you described it pretty well, Paul, with some either mock-ups or representations of what you're looking to do. And I think that would certainly work for me. And I think regarding the kiosk, I would suggest we put that on hold right now, and we find a location or consider a best location where that might work, or clearly it can't be on the property, so we've got to find potentially another spot for that. But
Yeah, the only thing I could come up with, because I'm concerned about, private property and inviting the public to trespass, and, I might be all right with it, but if I did sell it, the new owner might not be. So the only thing I came up with, do we put it, the town owns, 5 feet in from the street, do we put it, but we don't have sidewalks there, but do we put it on the edge of the property so people walking by can view it, but it's not like in the middle of the yard or
Right.
whatever. And I don't know whether Warren Center would be up for maybe putting it on their property, and they seem,
Well, that's what I say, if we table it for right now, and
Yeah.
then we can look at maybe some options, I think that's a potential. Framingham State may have some desire to have.
yeah.
I
I like the
to
ones
do
at
that.
Warren Woods,
Yeah.
Michael mentioned to me, I'm like a kiosk, it sounds like a roof, like a gazebo.
No,
But it's, it's a sign on a
Yeah.
post.
yeah.
and,
It's like
some
that
history.
sign in the back there, that type of thing.
Yeah, well, the ones I
Maybe
saw
a
at
little-
Warren Woods
little bit
were
smaller, but-
more like,
But they're trimmed,
Yeah.
yeah,
trimmed
they're
in wood
and
on
they're
a
semi
post.
slanted and
Yeah.
on a 4x4
Yeah.
post, yeah.
Yeah.
We're on the same page.
So
I
I
think
would-
the only sticking point is number 4.
Number 4.
Well, he
Yeah,
said-
so, was it sticky?
He said he was
Money?
good with it. But the only thing I want to just kind of go back to the interior and stuff, the proposal. I would say a couple things. One, don't do anything until you've come to us with the proposal. Like, okay,
Yeah,
all right.
yeah,
I'm just,
yeah.
I'm putting that out there
I've learned.
because,
I've
okay,
learned.
okay. And the second is whatever we agree on, I would want part of the preservation document. Like, I think it should get incorporated into it, just so it's outlined
Yeah, yeah.
what you've agreed to and how that,
Excellent.
That is important.
does that sound good?
Yeah, so I'll come in with something in 2 weeks or whenever you want me back on the agenda, and I'll show you what I've come up with, and we can chew on that and see what comes out of it.
That sounds
Yeah.
good. Joe?
You want to talk about number? We ready?
Joe has a question
Oh,
for
yeah.
you.
Before you get up.
No, I got one more, we have one more thing.
Is
your microphone on?
Donation, that's great. The ceilings, is there any way you can incorporate some of those plankings to make wood ceilings? And the only reason why I say that is, the first house that I bought, my wife and I bought, it was an older home, and we did the interior all over. And we took the old plankings from the sides of the walls that they were there, did them all over, sanded them down, and we put them up on the roof, on the ceilings.
Yeah.
And we stained them, it was a cedar stain. And they came out, I have to say, not because we did it, but it came out really nice.
Yeah.
And every time someone came into the house, the first thing they noticed
Yeah.
was, so.
I'm open to that. I was thinking the walls and stuff, but,
Yeah.
I don't have a lot of long pieces, but
Yeah.
like the hallway, which
Yep.
is narrow, maybe it'd
Yep.
be neat to accent, and, some of those
Yep.
hallways might have a little bit of a slant to the ceiling at that, because of the heights in the second floor, so it might be a neat thing to do. up
Just
there.
trying to help out in some way with respect
I
to
love
that,
it,
so.
I love it, so, cool.
Okay. Rob has his hand up too. Go ahead, Rob.
Yeah, just to go back just a moment to Yolanda's point about the interior tours, and I had actually brought that up a year or two ago, but we didn't really pursue it. But I just had a question. So we are talking about interior finishes here and hired a historic preservationist to look at the interior finishes. So I guess I'm just kind of throwing out there, if we're never going to have any kind of provision for public access, what's the purpose of the interior work? And that question is actually not only just to Paul, but to the board as a whole. This is something we should be pushing for, and why? Because we're serious and we should talk about it, at least some sort of public access. But
Should we be pushing for more public?
So, I think, Rob, my understanding, there's a number of historic homes, whether they're in Ashland or wherever they might be, and various communities have, they have these historical house tours. I think Yolanda mentioned that, but, that is predicated on the owner allowing that to happen. It may or may not, and in this case here, it may or may not, depending on ultimately who the owner is. I mean, Paul suggested that he might be amenable to it, but if he were to sell the house, that new owner may or may not, but I think it's really subject to the owner of record.
Right, and I guess if we're comfortable with that this late date, I was just, we are specifying interior finishes that have historically, just in the letter. So I'm just kind of feeling out our concern for that and how that fits with us basically leaving it up to the owner. Did you guys hear me okay with that?
Yeah, yeah.
So, it is kind of late in the game, but, we are, I thought it was a good point to bring up again. And, I'm actually not sure what to do about it at this point, but.
I'm not sure either. Do you have any?
So I think, so one of the goals of this project and one of the understandings of this project is that there were going to have to be some concessions on the part of the person who bought the property that would probably diminish the value of it. And in exchange, it was sold at a very insignificant price. So when we talk about things like, how it might diminish the value to have people have access to it, or might diminish the value if there's a kiosk in place, I think that was part of the, it may be unwritten, but part of the contract, unspoken contract that was part of this. So I think allowing access once or twice per year, once a year, I don't think that's necessarily unreasonable, but that's me. That's my thought.
Okay. Anybody else have any?
Can I make a comment? What if there was an unveiling when the house was done, where the town could come in and?
What is this?
Who, can I ask?
You gotta identify yourself.
You have, who, yeah, I'm sorry, you have to ask to, you have to ask to speak.
Okay.
She did.
May I speak?
If you can identify yourself, that would be great.
Yes, I am Paul's partner in crime.
Okay.
That doesn't
That
identify
doesn't-
who you
can-
are.
can you-
So Kelly Fitzgerald, 83 Ash Street, Hoppington.
Okay.
So, I have a hard time. So I own a historic property in Framingham. So the first thing that Paul and I talked about was, having the placard on the front of the house, the name of the house, circa the year it was built. I have that in Framingham. I'm allowed to invite people into my home in Framingham if they do a holiday tour and I put up a nice Christmas tree and do that and they want to come through. That's entirely up to me. What I suggest, if we want the town to be able to see the house, is that maybe when the house is complete and all the details on the inside are done, Paul has an open house for the town to come through and see the beautiful home that has been rebuilt, and the town can come through and he can have before and after pictures, because the inside of the house was falling down when he bought it. I walked through it and said, I can't believe you bought this house. Oh my God, it was crumbling. And now it's this beautiful home that was rebuilt. So that would be a really nice thing, I think, for the town. You could have refreshments, the town could come through, they could see it and feel good about what was done here.
Okay.
Just a suggestion.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay.
I know, we don't necessarily need to decide all that tonight, and we've got kind of a full agenda, but.
If that's, so part of this letter is, if we agree to this, and we're getting on to the fourth point, which is a contribution to the Historical Society, I want to kind of close the door. I don't want to, we can't keep coming back to the well on this. I want to cooperate, but when you start talking about, 10 years from now, whoever owns this home is now going to have another Christmas party for the public. I think that's getting to the point. I understand why you'd like to do that, but I think it's kind of getting to a sticky area. A lot of different things get in the way of that. It's private property, first of all. It's not in the preservation restriction at all. In fact, nothing on the interior is in the preservation restriction, but I'm okay going there. But to open the home up, I don't know. 5 years from now, I might be in a wheelchair. I don't know. I might have a tube coming out of my neck. I don't want people coming into that house. I don't know. But to say we're going to put that in a deed, that a future owner needs to let people in. I think that's a huge ask.
But
First of all, we haven't come to consensus on any
I know,
of
but I'd
that.
like to,
So,
yeah.
and I would just reiterate that the board has oversight on this project.
Mm-hmm.
So, this truly is a pretty doable thing that we're asking of you, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
We're not asking you to reframe the house,
It's,
which
Yeah.
had come up.
like I said, everything here is
Okay.
reasonable, yeah.
So, you know, this has been a project, you know, Doug Scott, our building commissioner, is here with us tonight for a different, Doug's like, I'm not here. But there's been a lot of time that town staff have put into trying to, work with you to make sure that this falls within the preservation restriction that you signed, okay? We want to work with you on this because we want to see this house look great. So we're discussing what we think is appropriate. We haven't come to consensus on it. What we are asking you is, you know, that, you know, you still need to complete the survey, that's a deliverable to the town. And, you know, we are talking about the specifics in this. We haven't come to consensus yet, so we are still discussing that as we speak. So I appreciate your
Yeah, I just-
input. We're
You
not.
know, I've been pretty amenable to everything, because I really want this all
Yeah.
to work, but when I heard about, you know, we're gonna give access to private property going down the road, I don't care whether I bought it for a nickel or I bought it for $1 million, it's still private property, there's laws.
Paul, it's not a foreign concept. I mean, it's there, you know, language in deeds in Framingham that allow for that to happen. I'm sure Framingham's not the only one,
Okay,
but
I wasn't aware of that, I'd love to see that. So, but anyways, so you're gonna talk about it more, we'll all talk about it more. I see these 4 points in this letter. I'm agreeable in theory to all of them with some
Okay.
minor tweaks that we just talked about. The final one is the, you know, donation to the Historical Society, which I believe is gonna go towards an additional survey of historical properties in the town. Is that correct?
Correct, yes.
There's one already done, already, right? We're gonna do it,
it was done in
We need to do an
2010.
updated one.
Updated one, okay. So updated one because the inventory's increased of historical homes, or because we gotta go back? I mean, I'm just curious. If I'm gonna help pay for it, and maybe
Sure.
we can do this offline, is, you know, what does that all mean? And I need to do some research to understand it. But it's something the Historical Society believes they wanna do, and it's probably a good thing to do for the town. So, I don't know what it costs to do that. We talked about it. It could be $10,000, it could be 20. Do they have quotes? Do we know yet? So what I'm proposing, since I don't think we do know quite yet what it is, that I would donate $10,000 initially to that effort, okay? Totally fine with that. And that, I don't know when it's gonna take place, I'm assuming sometime in 2023. And when they start working on it, or they get quotes or whatever, and they're locked in, I'll donate another amount to pay for the whole thing, up to a cap of $20,000. So I'll pay for it, but I'm not gonna pay 20 when it only costs 10 or 12.
It's reasonable.
It is reasonable.
It's reasonable.
And I'll pay the second amount, the second donation, you know, whenever you want the first, whenever they want the first one. You know, I like to push it off until next year, or whenever they have to actually pay someone to do it. I've provided a donation. It gets written into the agreement, so I'm on the line to do it. And that, I'll give the second donation. They'll be right around the time the house is finished, which will probably be spring of next year. And, you know, I'm sure the project will go well, if everyone's happy and all that, then, you know, the second donation to cover the full cost.
That makes sense.
Sounds reasonable.
Sounds
All
good. The only other question I have for the board is that we were talking about possibly having Paul put together a proposal for the interior of the home and bringing that back to us. Is that something that everyone is agreeable to?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so.
So that would take the place of
The historical
number two.
Yeah, the preservationist.
So it would take the place of the preservationist slash
Yep.
architect.
Yep.
Okay.
So, and also talk about, and 2 weeks might be a long time to do that. I gotta do something with that porch. So I don't, too late to talk about, can I dismantle the porch and put it back together again? I do have some pictures.
So I guess I have a question. In the descriptions that you gave of the porch, it does not sound like it's the original wood and porch to the house.
Up above it is. I'm pretty sure it is. The roof of it is.
Okay.
And I want to save it. I'm going to have to sister in new lumber. But however, the floor is, it's probably been replaced a bunch of different times. And right now, it's basically plywood. And the railings and the columns are, it's like you might see in a cheap house.
And is this something that then gets closed in, or
No,
is
no,
just,
no.
it stays as an open, the idea is that it
porch
would
that's
stay
on
as an
there now
open
stays
porch?
there. It's got two
Okay.
columns, it's got railings, you
Okay.
enter from the front. So what you see roughly will be what it will be, only totally redone. So, I already talked to the guys, we're gonna get a forklift underneath the roof, disconnect it from the house, and try to lift it up and reattach it, and use the right lumber around the old lumber so that, it passes.
But
And it
the
would
roof
be-
is visible from inside the porch.
Well, they were, typical porch, they had like the beadboard, the tongue and
Okay.
groove things in the ceiling, so you
Yeah.
didn't see all that stuff up there. So we saved that lumber, it's really bad shape. I would like to, put something back in like that again. So, like everything else in the house, we saved this, we didn't save all the structure, but, the structure's there, but it all gets covered up anyways. You gotta get sheetrock or beadboard put over it.
So couldn't you, and I see Doug's hand, look at the design from that period and I would think that there's a design from that period when the porch was originally
Yeah,
built
they use,
that you should be able to replicate.
Absolutely, yeah,
So-
and I would like to even replicate something a little bit more ornate for the columns and the railings that are more consistent with the period. I don't know what was on there, 100 years ago, but
Right.
right now it's, it's like 1990s.
Could we find pictures from the original
So,
house?
so Doug's here. Do you want to go to the microphone?
Go to the mic.
Maybe. I'm feeling really old tonight. Maybe what Paul could do is provide a sketch. And he doesn't have to hire an architect to do it. You just give a sketch of how you're gonna build it. And you can go to any of the lumber yards and get the book that sells the interior, the exterior turned posts, and I'm assuming you're gonna use something like that on the deck, or whatever you're gonna use. And you can provide that information to the board. So that because a picture's worth 1,000
accurate.
words. You could stand here all night
Yeah.
Yeah.
and have a discussion about, well, this and that and everything else. But if Paul's willing to do that, I think that will, and then you bless that, or whatever changes you want to do, then I think that the board can be happy. I'll know what I'm looking for, and then Paul knows what he's going to do.
Okay.
And there won't be any questions.
Okay.
So I'm just putting it out there.
No, I
I
think
think-
that's.
I think that's a good idea. I just think that there's probably there are probably pictures of the house with the porch that we can look at what the original, what it looked like,
Yeah,
and that can,
That
be
would
Okay.
replicated.
absolutely.
So if the board is amenable.
Yep.
And Paul, if this sounds good to you, if you want to just sketch it out, I think Doug had that's a great suggestion. And I think it gives us something to react to, because it's hard to kind of just talk about it. And
So just for clarification, great idea. You're talking about sketch in terms of like the finishes? Or are you talking about including the structure is what it is already of the roof, and then we're gonna frame out the base? Are you talking about getting that level of detail, or just the finish it is like it's gonna have this kind of a post? And so
sorry, Doug.
Make them get up.
getting a talk show.
I think that the frame is the frame. He's going to be using pressure-treated material. It's all going to be hidden. So the decking, if he's going to use for decking, the types of spindles that he's going to use, the type of railing he's going to use, the posts he's going to use, and whatever he's going to put on the ceiling and finish around the outside of the roof. And the stuff everybody sees. It's important. is what I'm talking
Yeah,
about.
Okay.
just wanna make sure.
Okay.
So, okay, so that said, and so we can move on.
Yep.
Can I then take the porch, dismantle the porch, raise the structure of the roof up, get that done, get it secure, so we reframe the base, the floor, we get the roof back up and attached a little bit higher, and then I leave it. And then we have that discussion as a sketch, because that's gonna be the final dressing on the thing when it's done. I can do, I still gotta, side the house, trim out the windows, get all that. So that's actually perfect timing for when that happens, 3-4 weeks from now.
Okay.
So I'll come back
The
next
only,
week with
the
that.
only question I have on that is like, when you say raise the roof, like I get kind of like.
Yeah. No, that's a sensitive topic. So, I gotta take the roof of the porch off, reattach it. But it will be reattached, I don't want quote
With the
numbers,
new
but a
second
foot,
floor,
14
yeah.
inches higher than it
Okay.
is now, because we moved everything up.
Okay, all right,
So
so
right
it's
now
all
you walk
within the
out and you
same,
hit your head on it.
so it's all within the same parameters of what we've already approved and what we've talked about? Yes,
As long
Correct.
as, when they come out to do this measure of the roof height, it's not too tall,
yes,
right?
Yeah, that's the overall roof.
So
This is
I would
the-
say, but where you attach that new porch roof is in relationship to the peak of the house. So I would say you wanna wait to do that until the survey is
Completed.
completed
I
for
think
the peak.
I hear what you're saying, I think it's independent, because the thing we're measuring is the framed peak of the main part of the house.
Right,
This is the farmer's porch, which
I understand,
attaches.
on the side of the
So it's
house.
not part of the measurement that we're doing of the overall height of the house.
Except that if something, if the peak is too tall and we need you to bring it back down, and you've already attached that side roof, it could look wrong based on the proportions of the house. I don't do a lot of building, but I look at a lot of things,
Yeah,
so.
so I guess that's my risk, if that happens, I gotta take the porch off
Okay.
again, and I gotta reframe the peak of the roof.
Okay.
It's gonna look like a gambrel, we're in all kinds of scary waters at that point. I'm very confident that we're gonna be within the
Okay,
height.
Okay.
just,
Yeah, but I mean, good point, I appreciate that it might be an issue down the road. However, I think we're in really good shape on that.
okay.
okay. So just for the sake of time, I know
Yeah.
we kind of want to just wrap things up for tonight. So going back to the letter, so number 1, cease and desist any work that damages or removes any historical materials from the home. 2, you are going to put together a proposal for us using the materials in the interior of the home, however, and that will be at our next, we'll talk about it at the next meeting, and then that will become part of our preservation restriction document. The kiosk issue, are we tabling that for now? Yes, okay, just making sure.
But do we wanna leave it in the letter?
Well, we definitely want to have, I think, leave it in the letter. We definitely want to entertain a kiosk. We just need to figure out where
Okay.
and
Right,
how
so
we're going to
leave it in the
do
letter,
But
but
leave
we're
it-
not gonna talk
Yeah.
about the
We're not gonna
specifics.
Yeah, leave it in there.
Okay, but it's in there, okay.
Okay. And then for, contribute $10,000 initially and up to $20,000 to the Ashland Historical Commission for the creation of a historic property survey, depending on the
And
the cost.
I'm gonna work with Michael or whoever he
Okay.
designates to just understand what that means, what it is, how much it costs, do we have quotes on it yet?
Yep.
Just so I'd like to know what it is.
Okay. And then the other thing is, we were talking about possibly exploring some sort of, whether it's, Kelly had mentioned an open house when the house is
Yeah.
ready, or something like that. Open it
I
up
don't know
to the
that needs to
public.
be in this letter,
Okay,
but I love the idea that when it's done, people get to go in and see it.
Yeah.
I think,
if you're open to that, I would actually like to put it in the letter.
Okay.
Because
Sure.
for me, like, if we have it in a document that you have, then it's kind of clear as to what we're all agreeing to.
Yeah.
So you can
Okay.
add wordage to something
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
It's-
And that's,
We're
but,
ready for occupancy, we're
Okay.
gonna open the doors.
Okay,
Yeah.
but just to be clear, though, we're not, the expectation is not to have this continuous commitment or obligation to whomever owns the house to open it up
right.
at any
Yeah.
particular
Yeah.
point in time.
Because we do
It gets a
understand
little
that.
sticky,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay,
Just call this the baptism.
okay,
So,
It's the baptism of the new home,
okay.
of
There you
the,
go.
of the redone home.
exactly.
All right. Does anybody else have any
The reveal.
comments, questions before we kind of, we'll take a vote on this, on the changes that we discussed. We'll plan to see you. Our next meeting is actually on the 12th, so it's not the first Wednesday in October, it's the second. And at that time, you'll have some stuff for us. You'll have some sketches on the porch or however that's gonna
And,
look.
Yeah.
And-
The wording for that number one could be, except for
Work on the porch.
dismantling
Yep.
and reassembling the porch roof back onto the house in the floor. So we
Okay.
could add that language.
Okay,
Cool.
okay. And then the survey and the proposal, back to us.
Yeah,
Yes,
survey,
okay.
proposal, sketch,
Okay,
yeah.
all right.
And we'll get the letter going in the meantime.
So that's a little on the messy side, but does that,
No, and you guys, I appreciate, your time and efforts
Yeah.
and, level of detail on all this. It's really good, refreshing to see it, and again, I want to keep working with the board. Lessons learned, we should have done this, a year and a half ago. This is what we're gonna do, and the architect comes in and we start
Yep.
talking, oh, by the way, it's gonna go 14 inches. Oh, wait a minute, if we had talked about it then, my God, we would have saved a lot of things, so.
yep,
I would agree with that.
yep, I would agree with that too. So if that, is there a
Motion to accept the changes to the letter to Paul Gustafson as we discussed regarding the 3 points and adding another one.
Okay,
Hopefully that's clear enough for you, Susan.
all right. Could I get a second? And roll call vote?
Reeves, aye.
Mitchell, aye.
Sure, aye.
Kinsman, aye. That passes 5-0. So thank you, Paul.
Thank you.
And it's looking good, We look forward to kind of seeing this through to completion. Yeah. Okay.
Okay, good.
Sounds good. And thank you to Doug for all your work on this too. It's, yeah, and being here, just conveniently so. So thank you.
Timing.
Yeah, yeah.
I was just gonna say, you may be here all the time.
You may be the next fixture at our select board meeting. So,
As long as Mike has a rope that I can sleep in when we're done, that's fine.
oh, man. Okay. All
We're
right.
gonna make you work all night, Doug.
Yeah.
It's gonna be it.
Okay, so you're good with all those changes? Okay. We're gonna move on to our agenda. We have, we're a little late, so I apologize for kind of the delay. It's a busy night in our little room. We actually have like multiple guests. This is the first time I think we've had multiple guests in, well, it's been like 3 years, so.
Yeah, it's been a while.
So we have a scheduled appointment to discuss the Valentine barn repairs. So we have, is it Stephen Tregelli? That's Tregella, sorry, thank you. From Mill City Construction here with us, and Doug Scott, our building inspector, building commissioner, I'm sorry. And do you want to kind of give an outline as to where we are with this and what we're planning to do, and then turn it over to?
Yeah, just for a little bit of context, a while ago, we made the decision to go out and make some repairs to part of the foundation on the Valentine barn, replace the left rear corner that had been severely deteriorated, and then also replace the roof on that. So, we went through the process with that. Mill City Construction emerged as the one who would be the contractor for this project. Once they got out there and they saw more of the detail and some of the more of the deterioration, the thought process changed to, well, could we do something more here? Do we need to do something more here? And so that started the process of, I think the original idea was maybe deconstruct the barn and then pour a new foundation. And then we would have to find money to rebuild it, to reconstruct it or re-erect it. Obviously, given some of the discussions that we had tonight and some of our experiences and some of the comments that we had received from people, that wasn't necessarily the best option. So one of the things that we did talk about is the possibility of securing more of the foundation, doing more of the roof, adding some rigidity to the framework, and basically renovating the barn. And so we did receive a proposal from Mill City to to do that work. The original contract was for $315,000. There was also an allowance, I believe, of $1,000, or not an allowance, I should say, but $1,000 per rafter that needed to be replaced, and I think that has been determined to be 30 rafters. So technically, it would have been $345,000, and that's without any sort of contingency. So what this new proposal is for an additional, additional scope, an additional amount of money, $578,000. I thought it was important to have both Stephen and Doug here to talk about what this actually means when we talk about, reconstructing or renovating, because as we are finding out, the devil's in the details. And I think it's important for the board to understand what's going to stay just as much as it's important to know what's going to be left. So that being said, Doug, do you want to introduce Stephen, or do you want to?
No, I'll start. So the $350,000 in the original bid was basically for work that was going to have to be taken out and removed, and to really make that barn safe and open, to be able to be open to the public. And when Steve and I met after Mill City won the bid and after submitting their proposal, we were looking at it. So, as you're aware, this is Valentine Barn is a long marathon. I'm stealing from a previous person that came up here, and that and the town's anxious to move it forward. And I think it was our belief that the citizens and the board are interested in getting this thing to a point where it's safe, it's solid, and people could go inside if they want to. Let me start by saying that this does not include any plumbing or electrical. We are in the new foundation that's going to be done. We will be putting in 3-inch and 4-inch conduit in the foundation, so it's prepped, because everything will probably come from the house eventually to get electricity and any water, plumbing of any kind. So Steve and I met, and we had multiple discussions, and I met with our town manager and to go over all this and to try to see if we could make this project come to fruition and be, at least this first phase, be done with, and make it safe, make it secure, and keep it in the way that it is now, as an historical barn. So, without going in deep into it, the barn on the interior will basically remain the same. Where we have a number of posts that will need to be replaced. So you will see new timbers. Right now, that barn is built all with pegs. There is no mechanical attachments in that barn. And when we do the work, there will be no mechanical attachments in the barn. Though I'm not so sure, we may have to do something in that back corner, the back left corner, that's really rotted, but nobody would ever see anything. It would be all hidden under the sheeting. And one of the things that we're going to do is we're on the exterior, once the rafters and any posts are replaced, we would go and put some 1/2-inch plywood, and then over that we put new siding.
Can I just interrupt you for a second and
Sure.
ask you if you could just briefly describe what the $350,000 project consists of, and what the community would be getting for
Sure.
that, and so people understand, you know, what, you know, there's a distinct difference between, you know, just a Band-Aid versus, you know, a more complete project.
So, the $360,000 was to strip the roof, repair any rafters. There are 4x6 rafters up on the roof, and replace rotted ones, and resheathe it with 1x rough sawn lumber, which would match what was existing. And then we would sheathe over that. I mean, you know, put the roofing, architectural grade shingles over that. We are also going to repair the 30 feet or so, something like that.
Doug, I'm sorry to interrupt. Can you adjust that laptop so that people can be seeing your face rather than your waist?
I'm sorry.
No,
Face.
not your fault.
Better face than waist.
Go a little bit further. There you go. It's just that, you know, it's
that
one of those
dialogue.
things, it's one of those things we have to be aware of with Zoom that, well, if I were sitting at home, I would appreciate seeing him
Yeah, no
like
problem.
this.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
No, I understand.
I apologize for interrupting. Yeah.
It's been a long night already.
So we have some, the foundation is a mishmash. It's some brick, it's some concrete, it's some stone. And what we were gonna do was try to piecemeal it. It's really bad in the back, in that back left corner, coming down. It was about 30 feet, or 30 to 50 feet that a mason was gonna come in and do some repair work on. And then we had some sills, so they're 8x8 sills.
Can you explain what the sill is? Not everyone may
So
know that.
a sill is what the frame of the foundation sits on. So in a timber frame, they are 8x8 timbers that lay on top of the foundation. And that's what locks in the floor and the walls. So we were gonna do some temporary repairs there with that. And we were going to do new footings and posts in the basement, in replacing them where they currently are, which is not the right, they're not in the right location. And that, you know, and then there was some variety of other small things that we were gonna do.
16 feet of floorboards.
Yeah, in the back corner. Yeah, in the back left corner.
Yeah,
That
2 by
whole
12
floor had
planks.
collapsed.
Yeah.
So we were gonna replace some of that and put new beams in underneath. But it wasn't gonna make it safe for the public to be able to go into it. And you would still have to take it all down to be able to make it safe. And it was a stopgap measure. And then when we were walking through it, so I had an engineer for the town's perspective look at this in the very beginning. He designed the bracing that's in there. And Mill City has, is part of their contract. They have an engineer that will come and work with them to make this safe and secure. And so what we've done is, with the new scope of work, is where we are gonna clean out the basement, the lower level, not really a basement, but the lower level. They were gonna pour a foundation walls on the inside. You leave the existing foundation. On the inside, we're doing 8-inch pour foundation all the way up to within inches of the beams. And on the outside, we're pouring the same size wall, but it's gonna be just below grade, so you'll never see it. And then what we're gonna do is they're gonna put in new footings, and new steel columns underneath. We have a whole lot of beams in the basement that we're gonna have to replace. Some of them are old logs, you know, timber, trees. And unfortunately, you can't get those, and they're not safe. So we're gonna replace them with beams in kind for what is our majority down in the basement. So they're gonna be beams, wooden beams, 8 by 8, 8 by 10, to match what is currently down there. And then we're gonna pour a whole new floor down there. And then we've got in the budget 100 feet of sill to be replaced, and we've got 100 feet of foundation, something like that. So in the new part, it's much more the foundation that we're gonna do repairs to. Yep. Yeah, the stone foundation.
That's what
Yeah.
I was gonna ask.
Yeah, yeah. You have to come up
You
here.
have to,
You didn't think you were gonna escape getting up to the mic, right?
So basically, when we walked the site, I was explaining to Doug, I was asking questions. You know, I'm like, okay, so what's the plan? What does the town plan to do with this, et cetera? And he's like, well, we can't do anything with it because it's still not going to be safe at the end of the day. And I'm like, yeah, well, that kind of defeats the purpose of spending $400,000 when you would then have to undo $400,000 worth of work to do it correctly. So that was basically where we were coming from. So my suggestion was basically do what he was just explaining and make it do it right the first time. You know what I mean? So the revised scope of work would still include the original scope of work, but then you would be able to utilize the building when you're done with it instead of having to just, for example, rip off a brand new roof that you just put on.
Sure.
Yeah.
How much of the original interior structure is going to be salvageable?
100% of it.
100%?
So the original timber frame will be reused. We won't even have to take it down, the way I proposed doing it.
Okay,
So you could do it two different ways. Like if you wanted to put in a traditional foundation, like what would be proper by today's codes, we could either remove the whole building, take it down and put it back together once you put the new foundation in, or you could basically support the building off the ground, jack it up off the ground, hold it up with steel beams, rip out the existing foundation, put a new one in, and then drop it back down. That would be very expensive. So I had a lengthy conversation with one of the structural engineers that we work with all the time. His name's Bruce Davey, very accredited guy. So he suggested what he talked about, basically sandwiching the existing foundation, because it's not going anywhere now. If we pin the whole thing with rebar, sandwich it, it's going to be better than it ever was. Then you would replace the existing timbers underneath the first floor that need to be replaced, because some of them are broken. If you go down there, you can see them, they're all cracked. So we'd have to do those in kind, replace the ones that don't meet code, that are actual logs, that they're not cut 10 by 10, they're round. And then basically leave all the existing sheathing on the outside of the building. So I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but there's both clapboard and cedar shingles around the whole building. So we would remove all that, leave the existing vertical sheathing that's underneath it. I want to say it's 1 by 12. I'm going off memory, but it's all vertical. You can see the sheathing from the inside of the building. That would remain. Then we plywood over that and put new cedar clapboard to
On the
match what was
outside.
originally there.
On the outside.
Correct.
Have you worked with historical barns before?
I've worked with many historical buildings, not a barn, but
Okay,
we do post offices, churches. That's what we do.
okay.
I've got a
Okay, 'cause-
question, one more question. Any of the, you mentioned these actual logs that are part of the basement. Any of them, let's say, salvageable to be used for, let's say, on site for a bench or
Of course.
something like that, so we
Definitely.
would save those.
Of course,
Okay.
yes.
Okay.
Oh,
So-
yeah.
The other thing was the floorboards, like in the original bid, we had 16 feet just from the back wall, 16 feet in. So we would do the whole thing. It would be 100% new, along with the second floor. Third floor would remain intact, because nobody's ever gonna go up there.
So I want to add, I'd like to add that the one thing we will be removing is the horse stalls.
Good point.
Because they take up a lot of room. They could
They're
have
horse
horses
stalls,
in there
yeah.
for 100 years,
Mhm.
so they're damaged. And it really eats up space. And it doesn't serve any purpose if you want to use it for gathering.
Okay.
Would there be a way to maybe salvage one and,
You could salvage them all.
Yeah, I mean, we could, any lumber that's coming out, unless it is rotted really bad, we're gonna set aside. And the town can do whatever they'd like to do with it. So we're not, there's nothing gonna be thrown away. There's, you know, we're gonna, you know, the goal is to keep it in its true form. But I do need to stress that there will be some new timbers. So they won't, you know, and you'll see it because they're new and they're not 200-year-old timbers like are in there. If the town wanted to, after you see it and you wanted to stain them or try to match what it is, that's always an option. We can do it.
but Doug, when you say timbers though, I mean, the whole place is wood.
Yeah.
So to me, that barn, there's the structural framing components essentially that
That's the
make
post
it,
and beam.
Yeah.
the post and beam part, which
Those
is
are
what
all
makes it
timbers.
historic.
The timbers are timbers are all of the
The frame.
pieces that are put together in a post and beam building.
So some of those will need to be replaced, is that what you're saying?
Yeah,
Yes.
we do.
It's about-
We're not positive yet how many. There's a budget in here. We know some definitely need to be replaced.
It's approximately half of the roof rafters. The back corner post is totally rotted. And then
Right.
there's like the first 4 or 6 floor joists are either broken or rotted.
So,
Yolanda.
you know, I looked through your proposal and I'm thankful that you said, you know what, we're not gonna do this other work because we would have to redo it. So thank you for being honest and upfront, and I think,
I mean, I'm a taxpayer too, like I. go to
right,
these
and I
meetings for my
think
town.
some of us have
Yeah.
said that before, right? You know, yes, we wanna fix the roof, yes, we wanna fix the foundation, but the ultimate goal is to be able to do something with this building. So where I got nervous, you know, and it's good to hear that you're saying you're gonna, you know, remove and dispose of, you know, starting in the site work, remove and dispose of stone wall along the sliding barn door on the right side of the barn. I don't want us disposing of any of these rocks,
Well,
right?
so
That,
let's-
hold on, and you can answer everything.
Yep.
You know, remove and dispose of the existing barn doors, main doors, and windows. If they need to be replaced, I understand that, but I would hate for us to just take them off and go.
No.
So for me, I want to make sure that we preserve as much of the original wood that is associated with this barn, because that's what we've heard from our residents. So, you know,
So I just wanna
I've
clarify,
seen
like,
the existing staircases, and I understand, you know, they're pretty bad. But as we remove that wood, if we can hold on to it, because maybe there's something else,
Of course. it's
you know,
your
that can
work,
then incorporate
The
it
town
back
owns it.
into,
you know?
once a final decision is made as to what we're gonna do with this barn, once it is inhabitable and usable, and, you know, our building inspector says, okay, you can put 100 people in this barn now. So that's, you know, or however many you're gonna determine.
Probably
So that's
40 by 60.
the, you know, so that's right, you know, I'm like looking at this going, remove and dispose, remove and, you know, and it says, you know, the 30 roof rafters. Are we really gonna have to replace all 30 of them, or is it the kind of thing where you're giving us an estimate and say,
So-
as we check each of those rafters, we'll determine if we have to replace them?
What we did is we went up on the second floor and counted all the rafters, there's like 62 rafters.
Okay,
So I think they're 3 inch by 4 inch.
yeah, they're good
Right-
size.
Right now you have like 4 massive holes in the roof.
Right.
So anywhere where those
Just 4?
are pretty much a guarantee to have
Okay.
to be restored
Okay,
or replaced. And I wanna say that was like 16 rafters. So
Okay.
then looking at the undersides of the rest of them, we were guesstimating half.
okay. And again, of those rafters, I would think that where the hole is, that part of the rafter is damaged, so you'd wanna replace the whole thing.
Correct.
But could we keep the part
You can keep
and
anything you want.
reuse it if
Like
there's
I said,
something else we can do with it?
It's your barn, you know what I mean? I'm
Well,
not-
I understand that, but I just wanna,
Yeah.
I'm not gonna be standing there going, oh, well, that's a good piece of wood and that's a good.
Yeah,
I'm,
no,
I'm,
what
I'm
I would
relying on your company
What I would
to,
suggest is, like, we would go out, we would have a scope review meeting,
Okay.
we would have a pre-construction meeting before we start anything, and we would say, okay, you know, the cedar or the existing shingles and clapboard, nobody wants, that's going
Right.
in the dumpster.
right,
Everything else, we're gonna put to the side, and then you guys can determine what you wanna do with it.
okay,
If you decide you don't want it, we'll dispose of it. If you decide
Okay.
you want it delivered to a town site, we'll do that.
okay,
You know what I mean?
okay.
I mean, I could show you a bunch of jobs we've done, like,
No, again, I was just, I wanna make sure it's,
It's basic construction language, you know, and I understand your
well,
trepidation.
and, you know, but this is not, I understand it's basic construction language, but this is not basic construction. This is a special barn
Yes.
that is historic, that we wanna keep as historic as
Yeah.
possible, and we wanna keep as much of the original material as possible, but still make it safe so we can use it for something.
Yeah, what we'll do, once they put their fencing up, we'll set an area aside where they can store, you know,
Materials that can be
Material.
still, okay,
and then, you know, maybe at certain points, the board can come out and do a site visit and look at the material and say, you folks can make the decision, we wanna save this, but that's junk, so let's get
well,
rid
and,
of it.
and bring people
So-
who know, right? I
Right.
mean,
Yeah, I mean,
which
that's
might
up-
not
that's
necessarily be
your
us
purview.
per se, but it would
Yeah.
be us or people who know what is usable and keepable and can be
Sure.
incorporated in
Yeah.
other things. Okay.
Yeah.
So, and my question is kind of similar to what Yolanda was asking too, but more about the project itself. And, you know, you guys just witnessed the people, you know, the project before you was a historical house that kind of took a right turn, let's just say that. And so, you know, from my perspective, my concerns are, you know, making sure that we preserve the integrity of the barn as much as possible. And I don't know if that means like having like a historical preservation barn expert or someone to kind of review, okay.
I built a few timber frames.
Okay, all right.
in my
Yeah,
life.
so
That's, but you kind of understand where I'm
Yes.
coming from,
We're
so,
very, very cognizant,
okay.
and Michael has made it very, very clear that he does not want to happen to the barn what happened on Chestnut Street.
Okay.
And, you know, I do enjoy working in the town, so I certainly don't want to lose my job. I don't want to be in here the next time being
So-
told, you're out of here.
Yeah.
So, you know, we are very aware of that, and, you know, being somebody that's built timber frames, it's some pretty exotic stuff. I know how they go together, and I know how they, to take them apart, and I understand that, about the saving of lumber and the existing lumber, because there will be some stuff, like the doors. The reason why we're replacing the doors is because they don't work right.
Right.
And
Right, no,
and-
I get that.
Yeah, and we're gonna repaint the, you know, a stain. Actually, we're gonna stain it, not paint it. So at some point, the board will have the opportunity, will come with a palette of colors, and the board will have an opportunity to, you want it white, you want it red, you want it polka dot, whatever.
Well, and I know for myself, the thing is, can we go back to some historical pictures and find out what the original, what it looked like originally? I think that's what people are trying to get to. And I also think about some of the hardware. I mean, when I took a tour with Michael about a year ago, there's still, I believe it's the equipment to take the hay up and down. I mean, there's all kinds of historical pulleys and the hardware that's on the doors to move for the stalls and stuff. I mean, that kind of stuff can be taken out, cleaned up, and either,
Stalls themselves, they have great repurposing.
right,
You
right,
can make,
so,
you can
okay.
make interior doors out of the stalls, you can make
Right,
fences.
right.
You know what I mean? You can,
Yeah.
there's a million ideas.
okay.
Joe, do you have a question?
Yeah, a few, thank you, Madam Chair. I just need to be, I need to feel good about this. And Doug, I stress upon you and Steve, your expertise in all of this is that the work that we're gonna do on the foundation, for me, the foundation is the most important thing. If you don't have a foundation that's strong enough to support that bond, then this discussion is for naught, as far as I'm concerned. So the work that is going to be done on the foundation, will that foundation support any and all purpose use that the town would like to see be utilized down the road? For, whether it be a recreational, commercial art museum, function room, classroom, for whatever purpose, will that support the uses that we would like to see?
That's what we plan to do.
Okay. I just,
And so, to be bluntly honest with you, we'll probably do a section of the foundation and see how it all works out.
yep,
Makes sense.
that definitely makes sense.
So, this isn't one of those jobs where you can go in and start hacking and cutting. Yeah, it's very systematic. It has to be very, very systematic. Mill City, Steve have done this a lot. I'll be overseeing it, I guess. And,
That's a yes.
Against your will.
yeah, against my will, yeah, I'm twisted behind my back.
That doesn't mean I don't listen to his opinions and
That's not what you told me, that's all.
so.
So, yes, the goal is to make it usable.
Right,
you know,
okay.
For the public.
Be functional for
Yes.
the purposes that,
That was
that the,
pretty
that the
much my
town would
point
like, okay.
When we first walked it, was, so you're spending all this money to
Yeah.
not be able to
Right,
use it?
and I appreciate that comment, because that
Literally.
almost
Makes sense.
verbatim. We're spending all this, but yet we're not sure if it's gonna work or not.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah,
like,
The-
I'm
Yeah.
looking at it and I'm like, could be beautiful.
yeah,
Like,
Yeah.
but you're gonna spend 300 and then you're gonna spend a couple more hundred just to undo the 300.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then you're gonna spend,
well,
A lot
I
to
appreciate
start
your
from
honesty and your candor and your expertise in that, and that definitely is gonna be something that, I value, right off the top, I value that, so.
So, one thing that you don't see very, very much in that bond is windows. And there are 11 30-inch by 24-inch windows that would be going back in.
and 6 regular size.
And 6 regular
Windows going in,
windows going
yep,
back.
Right now, they're all covered.
yep.
Yeah, they're all
Yeah.
covered up.
Oh,
So
really?
people
Yeah.
don't
Like
even
they're,
know that
like
they're
they're
there.
sided over.
They
Yeah,
were
I didn't
sided
know
over,
that.
yeah.
I didn't know that.
For, yep,
Interesting,
Yeah.
okay.
So that's also part of the job.
that's cool, that's
So
good.
it's gonna get all new windows, all new doors, new roof, new siding.
So,
New
Can,
floors.
can we see a rendering of what that might?
Well, I was gonna,
Or, I guess it's back to, do we have if there's windows in there that are covered up, I
So
would
the-
think that
there are
somewhere
some
there's
original-
pictures.
There are some
up-
original windows upstairs,
Oh, wow.
like not installed, they're just like on.
they're just lying up there,
Yeah,
right?
they
Yeah,
just, yeah.
So you could see them.
I mean, if you want to go through and you're brave, I'll be happy to.
I'm not going up there. Yeah, I know.
Inside, see it.
I mean, I've seen it, but I only stayed on the first floor, so,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
anyway, okay.
Yeah.
Decide we're gonna
Yeah.
move
Yeah.
forward with this.
So the other thing is, we were replacing that rickety set of stairs on the right-hand side.
Yep.
But there was nothing on the left-hand side to go up, so we were not putting a set of stairs there.
Okay.
Wasn't there a
You know,
crossover at
and-
either
and
the
I'll be
front or the
honest-
back?
Well, I'm sorry?
Wasn't there a crossover at either the front or the back to
It's
get from the
steps
second
up.
floor?
There's a crossover on both sides, but it's a step up.
It's more than, yeah, it's a good. like
You needed a step ladder to get to it.
4-foot step,
Yeah.
yeah. Plus, when you start getting people up there, now we've gotta put railings in.
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
You know, if later on you want to allow people up there, then that's would
That's a
be where
discussion,
we have a
okay.
discussion
Yeah.
about safety.
Yep.
But
Okay.
right now, the goal was to make the
Okay.
whole first
Mhm.
floor,
And make it weather tight.
make it weather tight and make
Mhm.
the first floor, so that people could use it, make it as open as possible.
Okay, thank
So,
you.
Madam Chair, my last question, and I haven't heard anybody ask this yet. One, when are you gonna start? And two, when will you start taking down the roof and replacing the roof at some point?
Well, first thing, we've gotta do the foundation.
Right,
That's the first thing. So what they're gonna do is they're gonna dig around the entire exterior. So the concrete, and it's in there, the concrete that's between the house and the barn will all come out. That's gonna be replaced with seed, grass
Yep.
at the end,
Lumen seed, yeah.
lumen seed. And then, from there, then they're well, we still have to have a discussion about it, but, my feeling is they need to work on that left corner.
Correct.
Back left
Next.
corner.
Yeah,
To
it's
make it
gone.
stable.
back left
To
corner,
make it
yeah.
all stable. And then over the winter and stuff, they can be working on it.
Okay. Cool, thank you.
Go
That's all I
ahead, and
have.
then,
All right,
and then I want to
so-
see if Ed has any comments, and then we're
Okay.
gonna need to
So,
kind of wrap
yeah,
this up.
I think the first thing we need to do is establish which direction we're going in here.
Right.
Whether we're gonna go with column A or column B or column A and B, and so on. I think that's the first thing we need to indicate to Mill City and to town management.
Right, no, I agree, I definitely agree. I just want to give Ed a chance, if you want to make any comments quickly, since you're here, and I know you have a vested interest in this project, so.
It sounds like a good plan.
Okay.
Yeah, I like it. It sounds like you're covering all the bases. I'm not surprised about the roof. I said that before. You know, I'd be surprised if you save half of those rafters. I'm not at all, I like the idea of the foundation, what you're gonna do with the foundation. That's good. I hadn't thought of that before. That's a good idea. And all in all, everything that they said, I agree with.
Okay.
I'm very pleased, yeah. It's a good idea. It's a good
Okay.
approach.
All right,
And be nice to see when it's all done.
all right, thank you, guys.
Yeah, at the end, you'll have a good basis of.
Yeah.
from
Well, that's
which
it.
is-
That's
Right.
one of the concerns that I had is
So-
that,
So where
Bases are
where do
good.
you guys fall on, like, are we
Oh,
all in agreement that we want to move forward with
I-
this? Yeah.
yeah.
Well, I think, based on what we were presented in the discussions that we've all had over the time that we've owned the property, is you can patch it and repair it, but it doesn't make it a usable piece of property.
Right.
And I think our goal is to make this barn usable for something. So to me, it's a no-brainer to continue this and do the whole thing that they're recommending. It's a no-brainer.
Okay. Rob, you've been quiet over there. Do you have any
You're
thoughts?
muted.
He's mute.
No, he's good.
No-brainer, geez, I don't know. Yeah, seems to make sense. I want to hear Michael talk about where the money's coming from.
Oh, we'll worry about that one.
Coming from your raise.
What raise?
We have some ARPA funds that we had set aside, and we have CPA funds, right?
So we had dedicated $750,000 in ARPA funds for this. I believe there's $120,000 in CPA funds. We have used some of that to clear the grounds, to help clear the grounds. There is going to be a difference that I'll need to figure out. Like, I'm gonna have to come up with some more money, like probably $100K, but what do I always say? We'll figure it out.
Yeah.
Okay. All
So
right.
do we need to take action on this to support moving forward on the complete plan?
We should
Yeah, I would
probably take a
appreciate that.
vote.
Yeah, okay.
So could I get a motion?
Well, hold on, so why would we need more based on the price and the quote and what we have from CPA?
How much has been
$578.20.
the clearing and the,
On the Oh, I'm sorry, I misread. Okay, nope, you're right, we may have to look for some more.
And I'm also thinking that we need to include a contingency as part of this too.
Okay.
Stevens include a $10,000 contingency as part of this
Yep,
proposal.
okay.
I think we should probably have a little more.
I move that we move forward with the complete plan for the barn and ask Michael to determine where the additional funding will be coming from.
Okay, could I get a second? And a roll call vote?
Reeves, aye.
Mitchell, I.
Sure, I.
Kinsman, aye. That passes 5-0, so good, great.
Thank you.
Thank you both for.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
For
Doug.
being
And
here.
I may take you up on that offer to do a more detailed walkthrough.
Yeah, I may go
I think
along
I
as
will.
well.
Just let me know.
Okay,
Get my email.
put my sneakers on and,
like emails.
Okay.
okay,
Yolanda wants to play basketball in the
Or climb the rope.
climb the road.
So,
That's the thing.
just to close this out, the next steps,
Yeah.
because we'd probably want to start before the ground freezes, correct?
So once the funds are available and they're certified by the town accountant,
Okay,
then we can do a notice to proceed.
okay, perfect, all right,
All right?
great, thank you
So
very much.
you will, in essence, be the clerk of the works for this project? Is that the understanding?
Amongst other things, probably, yes, I guess. If we could get Jen to, you know.
Well, Jen just is in the process of completing a $30 million project, so, you know.
This one's all Doug.
Okay, all right, so, so thank you very much.
Our pleasure.
All right, have a good night, thanks.
Thanks, Ed.
Okay, thanks, Ed.
See you. Okay, see you.
All right, so, moving on in our agenda, the next item under old new business is to discuss the moratorium on new sewer connections. Michael, do you want to talk a little bit about this?
So I believe the board had received over the weekend, I had put in place a sewer moratorium on new sewer connections. And what I'd like for the board to do tonight is essentially take a vote to ratify that and move forward. How we got to this point is we have a number of proposed developments in front of the planning board currently that total quite a bit of units. We also have a commercial project over at the Walgreens, which is going to be a Starbucks. And so as part of our review of these projects, we look at its impact on infrastructure, namely, in this case, the sewer infrastructure. And so we felt that we feel strongly that we have capacity for those projects that are currently before the planning board. So we feel like our sewer system, our sewer infrastructure can handle that. But what we started to get concerned about is if there are future projects that come on, and we've all heard rumors about different projects coming forward, including the Shaw's project, which is more than a rumor. We were worried that would impact our sewer infrastructure and some of the capacity limits that we have. Specifically, our peak flow constraint, that's part of the Brackett Road pumping station. So one of the things that we identified is that we don't really have really good data for the last year. The last year we've made a change that diverted some flow from the Chestnut Street pumping station to the Brackett Road pumping station. During that time period, or partially during that time period, the MWRA meters that measure that flow went offline. So we don't have data for that time period. Plus we've had an extremely dry year. I mean, maybe after the next couple of weeks, that's not the case. But it's really hard to tell with any certainty, what the impact of that change to divert the flow has on the system, and then also what any new potential projects that aren't before the planning board would have on the system. So this moratorium is a 6-month moratorium. It gives us the ability to get better data and look at that and establish kind of what our next steps are going to be with regards to our sewer system. So this would apply to everything except commercial properties and single-family homes that aren't a part of a subdivision. And again, I mentioned before, it's for a 6-month period, But we will have the opportunity, if we need to, and if we want to go in this direction, to extend that as well. So,
This is the first step to do that.
correct. So this the general overview.
Yolanda? Couple of questions. So what's our current cap of sewage that we're allowed to do through Framingham?
To Framingham, it's 2.1 million gallons per day.
Okay. More than
So
that.
our peak flow limit is 1 million gallons during an hour period. So
Okay.
and so
That's why I
we're
got that.
our we have measured 0.87, so getting close to that
Okay, so
within
our
the last
peak
year.
per hour is the 1 million.
Correct.
Okay, and do we know, I mean, you said this past year things changed up a little bit, but before that, do we know what we were using on a per?
Yeah, I mean we have data that shows
Okay, okay.
both the average flow per
And
day.
as you said, the capacity is there potentially with these new build, with the projects that are in permitting right now. So what are we going to do during this 6-month period to improve either one, our understanding of what we're using? Because obviously in 6 months, these projects that are here are not gonna be hitting yet. So are they gonna be giving us projected use of our sewage, or will we have to extend it another 6 months until some of these projects are online?
So what they do when they submit their applications, they work with DPW, they use baseline calculations
Okay.
that we can utilize to determine what the impact potentially could be. Now, that does not equate to a real-life situation, but those numbers are derived from, thousands of data points over the years. What we would use this 6-month period to do is collect more data and give us a longer time period with which to evaluate some of the changes that we made in the system, and also, let's say, a more regular period in terms of rainfall.
Okay, and then I have one other question. It says for single-family or commercial properties. So is that pure commercial? Because, right, there's a couple of commercial lots where people are looking to build, but they're looking to make it a mixed use. So would we look to allow them to do their commercial portion or no project at all?
This would be strictly commercial,
Okay,
so mixed use would not count.
okay,
Or that would be, mixed use would be subject to the moratorium.
okay. Okay, so if I'm a developer looking to come in and there's a commercial parcel that I'm looking at that would allow housing, if I want to do mixed use, it's a no right away. If I want to just do my commercial, that would be looked at and that would be okay. Okay,
One other thing I want to point out is that 40B has the ability to circumvent this moratorium.
and because of our housing numbers, a 40B could come in.
At this point in time,
Okay.
we're hoping that the planning board feels comfortable with 501 Pond Street in the near future, enough to approve that project.
And that would get us back.
That would get us
Okay.
back.
Okay, thank you. That's all I had. Steve?
So a couple questions, Michael. It seems like there's a couple of factors here that impact things. So we've got flow restraints, and that's predicated by the IMA that we have with Framingham.
So there's three different constraints that you can think about in terms of our system.
Well, also going to include pumping capacity as well.
So first is the interbasin transfer. So as you know, our wells pull water from our aquifer. The way our sewer system is set up, it goes to be treated at Deer Island and then gets put out into Boston Harbor. So we're taking water out of our aquifer and depositing it in another basin. We're limited by DEP to 3.2 million gallons per day for that total. We're well under that constraint. The IMA is 2.1 million gallons per day, so there's that constraint as well. And then there's also the physical infrastructure, so the pipes and the pumps. The pipes seem to be in good, we seem to have plenty of capacity there. The pumping stations is something that we need to get a little more data on, especially with diverting the flow from Chestnut Street to Brackett Road. And so, again, that's going to give us,
Okay.
this time is going to give us a little more opportunity to develop a better data set.
So, so the next question is, what would need to happen in order to, let's say, increase capacity? Because at some point, the moratorium's gonna go away, whether it's extended for another 6 months or not, it's gonna go away. And so what happens after that? You know, what are the potential remedies for increasing capacity? Yeah, I guess that, you know, that's the next question.
Well, we would have to make some we potentially would have to make some physical improvements to our pumping stations, again, our physical infrastructure. But we don't know, I mean, we've got some planned upgrades in place, but again, a better data set will tell us more about what we're gonna have to do. In terms of what I call our paper capacity limits, like the one with the IMA, we would have to look at it, you know, when the opportunity to renegotiate that IMA comes up, which is a while now, I believe. We could potentially look at it that way, but I don't think there's any chance that that's going to get increased.
Yeah.
What we could do, and I know this is something that Doug and Greg Eldridge from Haley and Ward are talking about and starting to explore, is the idea of a direct connection to the MWRA, which bypasses the Framingham system.
Right.
So we wouldn't have to deal with that
Right.
limit.
Yeah, and it goes to, you know, I guess ultimately for me, it goes to what we talked about earlier about the impacts of these developments, and how do we assess proper mitigations to a project that has ramifications that are pretty substantial and significant. So I think clearly the more data we have, I think we can better determine what those mitigations should be.
So before you go, I know Joe had his hand
Well, I
up.
wanted to do just a quick follow-up to Michael's comment about the interbasin water transfer, right? So even if we were to go direct with the MWRA versus through Framingham, I would think the interbasin water measure would always be an issue unless we do something within town to do wastewater, correct?
Correct,
Or
but
is it different if it's the MWRA directly?
No, that 3.2 million gallons per day, it would still be in effect. But again, we're well underneath that capacity,
Okay.
so.
What is the capacity that we have right now?
3.2 million gallons per day. Three,
So, I'll go back 8 years ago, when the discussion was a water treatment facility in this town, which is one of the reasons why we bought the Girl Scout camp, because we were gonna use that as a filtering field, a leaching field. Is that something that should be brought up and discussed or resurrected again?
I think we should have Greg maybe take a look at it a little bit more, but I think, just based on what I'm hearing, the DEP might have an issue with locating a wastewater treatment facility at like the aggregate site that becomes available. But that's something that he'll need to look into a little more.
I'm kinda curious as to why they would think that would be an issue. If we're filtering it on the Girl Scout campsite where there isn't that magnesium issue, it's gonna go directly back into the aquifers where the water is coming from originally. Or you take that water and you put that retreatment water in pipes, because we already have town water pipes up in that area, and direct that water right back into the town water usage again.
Yeah, I don't think I've heard of a system where you like directly convert wastewater into your water system.
They do it in Florida quite
In Florida?
honestly. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, they do. Yep. So I was kinda curious, or,
Yeah, I'd like us to take another look at, I know it's a big undertaking to look at a wastewater treatment plant, but to Joe's point, I remember having that discussion
Mhm.
the first or second year that I was on the board. So at least, let's take a look, you know, and if it's not during this first 6 months, then we might have to do a second 6 months.
it doesn't hurt. It doesn't hurt to bring that discussion back up. I'm just thinking, 'cause for the betterment. And, you know, there are other towns that could utilize it as well, that
Just-
help pay for that. Plus, if we get rid of that 1.75 million that we're paying to Framingham, that money could be diverted into paying the wastewater treatment facility bill.
Rob, I see you have your hand up. Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I just wanted to explore a little bit the current limitations in its legal aspect on us. So we're putting this moratorium in place because we're worried about our current infrastructure. What if, like, for example, the IMA with Framingham, which I think you said it was 2.1 million gallons per day, is that right?
Correct.
So is that a legal constraint? Can we then say that, you know, we can't, if our projections show that a project would bring us above that, is that a legal reason to not allow the development? How does that kind of moratorium work?
Well, we would end up having to pay surcharges associated with that if we go above both the average daily flow or the peak flow.
From Framingham, that's what I mean. But if we said to a developer, sorry, we don't have the capacity because of that limitation.
We could potentially say that, yes.
And so I guess I'm just saying, as we look at this, you know, one of the questions is, do we have to assume that it is our responsibility to continually grow the sewage infrastructure capacity? Or is it more of a discretionary thing? We do it if we think it's in our interest to continue doing that. So I want to, you know, put that out there for consideration. You know, we have a pretty good infrastructure. I had another question. Are we missing, or is there any request to run sewer pipe in areas where it isn't now? Are we any consideration to expanding the network, the sewage network?
No.
So, you know, we have spent, you know, going back many years, we've spent a lot of time and effort putting in the sewage infrastructure. And I think we should just also make sure that we really want that kind of infrastructure, that it fits with our priorities, whatever they may be. So, you know, when we go to look at the Girl Scout property and bypass the Framingham limitation, one of the things we should be thinking about is, do we need to bypass that limitation, or should we try to work within it? You know, so, you know, just throwing that idea out there. Consider.
It's a good question.
Yeah, all right. Thanks.
It is.
Any other comments, questions? We're good? So you're looking for us to ratify
Yeah.
this? Could I get a motion?
Sure. I move that we ratify and support the sewer moratorium as presented by our town manager, Michael Herbert, for 6 months.
And a second?
Second,
Roll call vote?
Reeves, aye.
Mitchell, aye.
And Kinsman, aye. Rob put his hand up.
Yeah.
Yep. So, that passes 5-0, so
Thank you.
we're all
You're
set there. and-
ratified.
You're ratified, and you had
Okay.
taken this, you had said you were gonna take this to the Board of Health too, correct?
I talked to the Board of Health about it last night, and they voted to support it as well.
Okay,
So this will run from 9/16/22 to March 15th?
March
something like that?
16th, yeah.
March 16th, 23. And so then, at some point, probably in January or February, we'll look at if we've accomplished what we want and discuss if we need to extend it. Okay,
okay, sounds good.
thank you.
Thank you all. That was a good discussion.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Next item on the agenda is to discuss the hometown parade scheduled for October 15th at 2 PM and funding for the event. I think we're really just looking for
I'm
funding,
just
right?
looking for money.
Do we have a not-to-exceed amount yet? I know it was for public safety.
Yes, so 25, if you would allow $2,500, hopefully, if we do exceed that, we'll figure out a way. We'll
Okay.
figure it out.
I move that we support not to exceed $2,500 to help fund the public safety for the hometown parade on October 15th.
And a second? Roll call vote?
Reeves, aye.
Mitchell, aye.
Sure, aye.
Kinsman, aye. That passes 5-0. We are picking up speed.
So, by the way, we have the select board, apparently you're gonna be driving your
Yeah,
your Jeep.
just gonna have a couple
And I had
balloons.
an offer of a convertible.
Ooh.
So between you and myself, everybody will drive in a open-air vehicle, assuming the weather's good.
Okay,
Sounds great.
And I'll
Larry?
update our proposal so that they know. I mean, I told them already the one Jeep, so I'll update the proposal with the
Right.
second vehicle.
Jean Knifton's already decorated, she's already got ideas of decorating the Jeep, so.
Okay. Uh-oh.
There we go. We're just gonna let that,
Yeah.
we're just gonna keep moving.
We're moving on.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is to discuss the recent joint meeting with the planning board regarding the comprehensive plan. We all met with the entire planning board a week ago, and I guess before I kind of like turn it over to you to kind of walk through the changes that we've made to the plan. We spent 3 hours with the planning board. It was a very spirited conversation, and I had thought initially that it was going to be a pretty straightforward discussion over the last few things that we hadn't come to consensus on. So, I thought that a joint meeting would probably be a really productive way to move forward. And to be fair, we did get to consensus on a number of things, although we did not.
There's only really one sticking point that we didn't get to consensus on.
Thinking about it and having just my take on it, and having a conversation with Marcelo, who I've known for 10 years, because, Marcelo had some concerns about how we operated that meeting and what we kind of discussed and how it was discussed, whether we're all going to be able to move this project effectively forward. And he had some concerns about it. And so my thought, and I just wanted to bring this up to the board, is, when I thought about it, I do think there's some fundamental trust issues that I think we have to make sure that we resolve with the planning board, because in order for this to be successful, and in order for us to come together with a plan that brings the community in and does what we hope it will, which is to set this plan for the next 20 years, we all have to really hit the reset button, basically, to say, okay, you know what, like, we all need to start from scratch and really start building this relationship of trust. And I think it's important, and I think if we are going to go to town meeting and ask for funding for it, if we are going to say to the community, we are going to do this, we have to all collectively, and I'll say this to the planning board too, we all collectively have to agree that, we are committed to the process and committed to one another. Because if we have a repeat of what happened last week, like, it's gonna fail before it begins, because we're never gonna get out of our own way. So that's just my opinion. I came out of that meeting really disheartened, because I thought, this should be like a really great project that everyone's excited about, and I didn't get that feeling
Yeah.
when we left.
I think we could get there, Randy. I've thought a lot about it. I'm sure we all have over the past week. And, we just spent a fair amount of time getting an update on private development projects and on the sewer moratorium. And these are, clearly, this is a project that's important to address those issues. And it's needed for, all of the proposals or plans that we know are gonna happen.
Mhm.
So, I thought a lot about it. I thought maybe we should reset. We should say, let's take a breath, let's come back in the spring. But, the fact is that we have consensus, or at least our board has consensus on these changes. And, my feeling is that we should move forward with approving these changes as we've written them. And combined with the fact that the planning board did in fact take a vote to move forward with a comprehensive plan, and they submitted a letter to us asking for us to be a partner, which we've embraced. And I think, and I think we should embrace it. And I think it's, you know, we're obligated to the community, I think, to move forward with this. And my feeling is, once a group is assembled that is actually working on this project, I'm actually optimistic that this will be a good process. This will be a good, you know, it can be, it will be. But, you know, that's my feeling. And I don't see, I'm not convinced that we should postpone this at this point. I think we should, you know, move forward, at least from our perspective, and let the planning board determine, you know, what they, I guess, what their continued concerns are at this point. So that's my take on this.
Joe?
No, go ahead. I can wait.
No, the only, Stephen, I hear what you're saying, but we take a vote, we pass on, and we want to move forward, and the planning board doesn't. We're two ships in stagnant waters, not doing a damn thing. And how is that a positive thing for the town? I mean, this project is the project that should be done, should be completed, and it's well intended for the community as a whole, for the town as a whole, for the future, to use as an outline for many years to come, and you tweak it all along the way. I mean, that was my thought and process about this whole comprehensive plan, along with other plans that have just been collecting dust over the years. Being part of the Charter Review Committee, I can tell you it wasn't an easy process. It was a long, arduous process, but you know what? And I mean, I said it at the meeting, and I'll repeat it again. There was a lot of give and take, an awful lot of give and take, especially when it came to Charter Review. And we spoke with everybody, every committee every committee member, every employee, every department head as part of that. This process that we're talking about with the comprehensive plan is going to be very, very similar. And yeah, there may be some people that disagree, but at the same token, if everyone realizes this is for the better and for the betterment of the community as a whole, it shouldn't be an issue, but it's becoming an issue. And I guess that's what I'm having a difficult time wrapping my head around. Why is this becoming a difficult decision to make? Is it personalities? Because I'll tell you what, there's the door. Take it and go. Just leave. It just, you know, I'm getting old, and I don't have time to play. You know what I'm saying? I mean, we need to act on things, we need to act on them, but they have to be done in a very prudent, a very professional way. And I'm not saying that the other board wasn't acting in that capacity, but at the same token, my goodness, enough already.
My only, you know, comment, and I agree with you, Joe. I mean, this is for the community. This has nothing to do with individuals, individual personalities, individual dynamics between others. But for me, I think the optic is that, you know, we control our destiny as a board. You know, for us to support this and move forward with it sends a message. If another board decides to send the community another message, we have no control over that.
You're right,
You
you're
know?
absolutely right.
So that's why I feel
that.
we should support moving forward with this. And, you know, but I agree with you. I mean, it's you know, with both of your comments, it was a frustrating meeting, so.
Rob can go and then I'll go last.
Rob, go ahead.
I don't, Yolanda, did you want to speak?
No, go ahead. I can. I'll go last.
Yeah, I'm kind of in between on this one. I think the current proposal looks okay to me. I guess I would push back a bit about, you know, we had some legitimate differences. I think we should recognize and respect those differences. So, you know, it's okay. We had a robust exchange of ideas, and not everybody agreed on everything. So I think that's largely positive. And so you know, I think I appreciate everybody's point of view on this, and I think it was all legit. And so, I guess we should, I think, to kind of echo Brandy's concerns about, how do we move forward? I think it is, and Steve's, I think it is important to move forward, assuming we can reach agreement. And I think the sooner the better, actually, because we want to get this process moving. But, again, so I think I can support this paper because I think it does, there were concerns about, it being staff-driven versus resident-driven. I think those are legitimate. I think this document has those kinds of safeguards in place. And so we can move ahead with that. But I think these concerns are legitimate. We just need to work it out. I think it is important. I think the town manager should be heavily involved in this, not making the decision, but being involved. And I think that's legit. And I think we, want to recognize people's concerns and put together a process and a mechanism that, addresses those, which I think this one pretty much does. It puts in the hands of the steering committee and defines what they're going to be doing. And so I think it's at least something to move forward with, whether we take a formal vote and send it to the planning board or not, or we just maybe kind of circulate it to them to see what their response is. But again, I wouldn't denigrate or criticize people who disagree and, have concerns that are maybe a little different than ours. That's all. And, I'd be interested to hear from Brandy or Yolanda about, how do you think about moving forward given the current situation? So that's my thoughts on that.
Yolanda?
Yeah, so I think it was a hard meeting for the joint meeting, but I think overall it was a productive meeting. I think what I heard from the planning board is they worked toward consensus. And now they're saying, well, we may not have consensus for certain things moving forward. I feel that we as a board are all pretty much in the same place. We all think we need to move forward this. We all believe that the town manager needs to be part of the project management team. And we all think we need to start doing this now. The community has been waiting for a comprehensive plan, a strategic plan, whatever you want to call it, for quite a while. So, to your point, Steve, to push it off to the spring doesn't make sense. You're concerned, Brandy, about how do we move this forward based on the conversation from last week. I think if we show support and have the discussion, we want to work with the planning board. Mm-hmm. We know this is important. We respect what they think, but I would hope that they would then respect our thoughts on what this process should be. So I think we should vote the language change that Michael has presented that then can go back to the planning board, and then we need to hear from them. I don't know if we need to have another joint meeting, because to me there's only real sticking point when we left that meeting was if the town manager was part of the project team. I think everything else was pretty well agreed to and defined. It was just too late and people weren't looking to take some kind of vote or action in relationship to that. But I think I would support approving this changed language and knowing that the planning board they might not have a 5-0 vote with this language. And we have to be comfortable with that, and they as a planning board have to be comfortable with that. Now, if for some reason it comes that they don't support this at all, then we'll have to go back and have a conversation. But I think we need to keep moving this project forward, and us supporting this language tonight is what moves this project forward. And then just a side note, Joe, you brought up charter review. Believe it or not, we're about due for another one. Because isn't it every 5 years that we have to do a charter review?
Yeah, we don't have the capacity to do that.
No, I'm not saying we have to do that. I'm just saying that it's something it took us a while to get that one done. So not now, but just to, it's one of those things where I don't want someone to come up to us and say, hey, you're supposed to do this. Well, we're aware we're supposed to, but we can't, if we're going to do this, we don't have the capacity to do a charter review.
So I would say, I agree. I think that we take a vote on this tonight. I think that we're pretty much in agreement. I think the planning board's gonna take this up tomorrow night. And I would say if there's any other things to be discussed jointly, maybe we invite them to our next select board meeting and carve out 20 minutes to like.
Because we meet before they do,
Yeah.
again. Okay.
So, and, you know, I think if everyone is in agreement that whatever is agreed to, people accept and kind of are good with. And, if that's the case and we can start all working together, I think this could be great.
Well, regardless of, you know, there might be one or two people that ultimately don't agree with the language, and that's okay.
Yep.
You know, but if the majority, in fact, do, then we move forward, and, you know, it just, you know, I mean, I've been on the losing end of many votes.
Right.
You know,
Right.
and that's what happens. And what do? You move on and you support what the board
What the
has
majority
voted on,
yeah.
right?
Yep.
And that's what you do.
And we all are working towards
Is-
doing this for the community.
That's
This
right.
isn't for any of us individually, this is really for.
So there's no scorecard here. It's,
Nope. No.
it's, you know, ultimately, you know, it's what is best for the town.
Do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I'll just, you know, add that I think everybody sitting at the table and virtually on Wednesday kind of walked away feeling frustrated and discouraged. And, you know, that meeting has had collateral damage beyond that. I mean, there's, you know, we had some comments about staff and their independence and their ability to think, you know, individually. I want to point out that, you know, Jen is just as much capable as me as doing this, and I feel that 100%. I think going down the road of having a vote based on one person of whoever, whether it's the town manager or who's going to be if we're all going to vote on who's going to be selected from the planning board, or we're all going to vote who's going to be part of the select board, I think having a vote centered around any individual or personality is probably not the best way to go.
Well, I would think that we as a select board have to vote on who's gonna represent us, and the planning board would have to vote on who's gonna represent them, correct? I mean, we won't vote or support the planning board recommendation, and they won't vote or support ours, but as a board, the five of us have to determine.
Well, I agree, but
okay.
the road we're going down is that everybody's going to take a vote on one individual being a part of it. And
Yeah.
I think, you know, if we can't stop that, it's a slippery slope.
Well, that's why we're voting on this language the way it's written.
As a total.
Right, yeah, right.
Yeah.
But, no, I, you know, certainly appreciate, you know, the support, and, yeah, I think we need a total reset from Wednesday. Obviously, there's some personality clashes, and, you know, myself and I'll just say Anna, you know, we met today, and we're trying to work towards, you know, whatever barriers we have between us, trying to break those down. But at the end of the day, this is beyond any individual.
That's right.
Oh, of course.
It is beyond, and the structure is set up to where there is no one individual that is going to have a dominating role as part
You know,
of this.
there's nothing wrong with conflict, particularly in this arena. You know, respectful conflict is good, and I think I'm the one that mentioned or made the statement that democracy is messy last week, and it is, and you know, and I think, you know, part of it is that it should be, because, you know, the product tends to be better, I think, at the end, or it could be better.
Yeah.
Could be, yes.
Rob?
Yeah, just to throw one thought out there, I think we have kind of broad agreement here. Would it be better to, you know, to go with Michael and Wayne's point, to just kind of circulate this back to the planning board without some kind of formal vote that, you know, maybe, you know, to go to Mike's point about voting on one person, or, you know,
I think you
Yeah,
can
I'm
vote
just-
on the changes.
I think we're voting on the language changes of the document, Rob. of all the language changes.
And then the planning board will discuss that tomorrow night too. And then if there's still anything that needs to be discussed, we can meet jointly and hash out any language or hash out any last details. But hopefully we're at a point where, you know, we'll have consensus, they'll have consensus, and then we'll start to actually get this thing started.
Yeah. So I would
Yes,
propose,
changes. Well, can I just say one thing before? You know, I'm just kind of saying maybe it's best to keep it informal. I think we all understand what this document does. Do we need a formal vote? I guess that's all I'm saying.
So I would actually disagree with that. I think we do need
Yeah.
a formal vote, because I think we need to have, to take a position on if we support this particular document. And then, the planning board can do the same. So it doesn't mean that things can't change, but it does mean that we've taken a position and they have as well. It would be what I would suggest.
We'll have to come back.
so I would make a motion that the board support the language as presented as part of the comprehensive plan process.
Second,
Roll call vote?
Greaves, aye?
Mitchell, aye?
Chair, aye.
Kinsman, aye. That passes 5-0. Okay, so,
Thank you.
so Peter and the planning board have this document, right?
I will make sure that they have this document.
Okay.
And you had, I think, constructed two documents, right? You had the longer narrative that you included this in, and then you broke this one out.
Yeah, I think it's important to, just for continuity's sake, to make it part of the larger document, but
But these were the only changes that we
Right.
really
Yeah.
made.
Okay. Sounds
Okay.
good. All right. Thank you, guys. Moving on, and the next item on the agenda is to open up the next round of BAA grants with a submission due date of October 21st. In the past, Steve and
And
Rob
Rob.
have served on the.
We're ready.
Are you guys,
We're ready, willing,
Rob,
and able.
are you still up for another round?
I'm willing to do it unless other people want to get in on this.
I don't know, you guys have been doing such a good job, we don't want to mess up
I was
something
gonna
that's
say,
working.
I say it's perfection. Yeah.
You know, the fact is, we're easy, Rob. We really are. You know, I mean,
Really?
everybody gets a little bit of, a little bit, everybody.
Spread it around.
I move that we open up the second round of our fall grant, BAA grant round with Steve and Rob as our subcommittee with the thanks of the rest of us.
Second.
And roll call vote?
Greaves, aye.
Mitchell, aye.
Mignani, aye.
Chair, aye.
Kinsman, aye. That passes 5-0. So Susan, you'll put this up on the website and we'll start promoting that we're accepting applications for the fall grant round. And we encourage everyone who, especially those who did not apply for a spring grant, to put in an application before October 21st. Looking at the wrong thing. October 21st. So, all right, thank you. Next item on the agenda is to discuss select board meeting schedule for the remainder of the year. At our last board meeting, we had voted to change our first meeting in October from October 5th
So
to.
I think the calendar that was in our packet is off by a day,
yeah?
because Wednesday should be October 5th, and our
That's right.
meeting should be Wednesday, October 12th.
Yeah,
And in the packet, it has the 4th and the 11th.
that's correct.
I have in my
That
packet.
is correct.
No, I have, but maybe.
This final
My understanding,
backup,
this is the one I got today.
right? So the 6th, I know the 6th is a Thursday because we're doing
You have your
a
breakfast.
senior breakfast.
Oh, okay. I'm looking at the printout. And the
Yeah.
printout
Oh,
looks
okay, I don't-
right.
Yeah.
Okay,
So,
something, that's,
oh,
okay.
that's weird. That's
Okay,
that's
so it's the
wonky.
12th instead of the 5th.
So it's the 12th instead of the 5th, and that's
Okay.
moved because of Yom Kippur.
Yeah,
Yep,
And then we had talked about moving our meeting, because we're meeting on the 12th, moving that to the 26th as our second
okay,
meeting in
so we're doing
October.
that.
And then looking at, we might as well look at the rest of the calendars, the months for the remainder
Yep.
of the year. So typically, we would meet on the 2nd and the 16th.
Yep.
The 2nd, I know I will be out of town,
As
Yolanda
will
will be
I.
out of town, so
Which day is that now?
that is Wednesday the
November
2nd.
Wednesday, the
So-
2nd, yep.
I can't
And then
make
the
it the
16th is town meeting, so, so the proposal is to meet on the,
9th and the 30th.
9th and the 30th, okay?
The 9th is the big YMCA silent auction, and I mentioned that the last time we spoke, so.
So we're meeting on 10, 12, and 10/26. And
I
then
mean, if we have to, we have to,
11,
but
11/8 or 9, 11/9, and then it would be 11/30, okay?
could we do something? I mean, we've got a lot on our plate these days, you know, it's not like.
it's not like we can miss another,
We
Yeah.
probably
if it
do
is, it
need-
is, I'll send someone instead, but
Okay,
it,
what do you think, Michael?
That's tough. Obviously the 23rd would be the week of Thanksgiving.
oh, yeah,
Yeah.
no,
Um,
But if it
No,
has to be
that's
the
fine.
9th, it has to be the 9th,
Then you're gonna go back to back weeks. Because you have one on the 30th. If you're gonna change the 9th to the 23rd.
What time is the auction, Yolanda? I forgot.
it's a whole night affair,
Right.
so.
Um,
No way we could do it on a Thursday, huh?
So Thursday, I have the DEI task force meeting, on the 2nd and 4th. Do you want to potentially look at, Tuesday, the 8th?
It's election day.
Oh, it is
have a
election day.
meeting
You
on
can't have
election
a-
day.
yeah.
So God has clearly defined that they do not want, there's, I don't, can we at least agree on the 30th?
Oh, yeah, no, if it has to be the 9th, it has to be the 9th, but, yeah, the 30th is fine, so the 16th and the 16th, we'd probably meet before town meeting anyway, so, okay.
So,
mean, what-
Rob, I just want to check before we,
And then will we also meet on the 7th?
So my suggestion is the 14th. You're kidding me.
Me.
You're kidding me. Really?
I mean, that's a work week for me, I'd be working that night, but if we meet the 14th,
Of
December.
December.
Okay.
All right, so what dates did we
Oh, you
agree
could
on?
meet 2 weeks in a row.
what was that, Rob? I'm sorry. Repeat that?
We could meet in a row, right? I mean,
Yeah,
30th
could.
and the 7th.
yeah. Yeah, we can
not
do
sure
that.
21st, right?
All right,
Yeah,
why don't
we
we,
could do
why
that.
don't we do that? Why don't we do that?
On the 7th?
Let's meet on the 30th and the 7th,
Thank you.
and
If we need to have another one in December, we could.
we could.
We could, if
Okay.
necessary.
So we're meeting the 30th
Of November.
of
yeah.
November, and
And the 9th of November.
And the 9th, okay.
Yeah.
Just-
Are those dates okay with you, Rob?
Yes, I think they are, yes.
Okay.
so the
Just,
30th.
just a note on the 12th, I'm not gonna be there for that meeting, but, the trip has been.
The 12th of October?
Yeah, something came up after we scheduled it.
Okay.
I'm not gonna be able to
So
miss,
again, to confirm, the October 12, October 26,
Yep,
November 9, November 30,
yep, with town
And-
meeting on the 16th.
and then December 7,
Yep.
and then a
December
potential if we need it. Is
On
that
the
what I heard?
21st. Yep,
Okay.
all right. All right, so
Okay.
it sounds like
You're not gonna be-
we're okay with those dates?
Be okay.
Okay, all right.
I'm committed. I'll see what I do. I'll see what I do.
So we need to vote to change everything except the one on the 12th, because we've already voted that one.
Okay. I move that we adjust our meeting schedule so that we meet on October 26th, November 9th, November 30th, and we keep our regular meeting on the 7th of December and the 21st if we need it, with special town meeting on the 16th.
Okay, can I get a second?
Second.
And a roll call vote?
Reeves, aye.
Mitchell, I.
Vignani, aye.
Share I.
Kinsman, aye. Passes 5-0. So the other thing that I wanted to put on the agenda, because we had tabled this from a while back, we had talked about having a select board retreat. And I don't know if we want to try to, because we were talking about doing our goals and priorities, and do we want to try to schedule something before the end of the year? And
I
it
think
is-
given the.
given what we just went through, so do we?
I mean, Saturdays after, farmer's market is done, that's a possibility if we wanted to do a Saturday.
We could.
Okay,
Yeah.
Certainly something to
Yep.
look at.
okay. Joe, your thoughts?
Listen, I'm open for anything, I'm retired.
Yeah.
so it doesn't really
You want to
matter.
throw out some dates, Saturdays after the 15th?
We
That's
could-
the-
Yeah, okay, so looking at, let's look.
22nd, 29th.
I'd like to propose the 29th.
Okay.
Of October.
29th is good for me. Are you guys, what do you,
Yep.
yeah? Okay.
Where am I?
Jen-
I prefer,
Rob, you okay with the 29th?
Are you here?
well,
Oh, I'm
can we
here.
go later, like late November, early December? In terms of, I'm just kind of pretty busy.
December's
It's
tough.
fine with me.
December gets really tough. Especially weekends in December.
The third, if we talking Saturday, how about the 3rd or something like that?
Of
January 3rd?
You're talking January, Rob?
No, December.
No, I
December
can't do,
3rd.
I
No.
can't do Saturdays in December. Like
We
we're,
should probably check and see if Jen's available too,
okay,
as well.
okay.
You want
Do you want me
Why are
to?
you wanting to push it out to December, Rob?
It just, there's a lot going on, between trips and work and things like that. And, election work and
Do you
things like
wanna-
that.
Do you want me to go back and propose?
Yeah,
like,
so
Jen and I can
Michael
talk?
suggested that he'd go back and propose a couple
to, yeah,
dates.
that's fine.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Okay, thank
We
you.
definitely want to have Jen involved.
Right.
We definitely want Jen involved, yep.
And we're looking at Saturday mornings, is that it?
She's right there.
She doesn't know what she's walking, yeah,
Came back.
yeah.
No, Saturday mornings, that's what we're looking at, like 9 to 12 kind of thing?
10 to 12.
Yeah.
10 to
2
12.
hours,
10 to 1.
Yeah, 9 to 10.
9 to 10. Yeah, that would be a feat, that would
All
be
right, so
something.
Saturday.
All right, so why doesn't Michael put together a couple dates and send them out to us, and we'll see if we can figure out
Make
something
sure
that works.
Jen's involved in this,
Yep.
because we need her.
We do.
Right.
Okay,
I can let you know that it can't be November 5th.
Okay.
Let me see, I'm away November 5th. We're going to be in the city on the 5th, so that's no good.
Okay, so that's good to know.
Yep.
Fifth. We might have to put
No,
it in the
no,
January.
November 5th is not good for me.
okay.
Okay.
All right, if we have to,
Or
to,
the 12th.
The
Push
way
it.
we're going, it'll be December 21st before we get
How
done.
about February 4th?
so Michael's gonna,
At that
Michael's
point,
gonna, yeah,
Why?
Michael's gonna send out some dates. We'll see if we can, maybe we'll do a doodle poll.
The doodle poll.
We'll rely on a doodle poll. Next item on the agenda is discuss the 2023 Boston Marathon and
Motion
deadline.
to go past 10 PM.
Oh,
Oh my
man.
gosh.
Almost
Oh,
there, so-
man.
Already 10 o'clock?
I was waiting.
Oh, I don't even, okay, yeah, we
We're,
gotta do
we're,
it.
we're
Yeah.
not gonna get done
No, I
in 2
know,
minutes,
I know,
so
I
motion
know.
to go past 10 PM.
In a second,
Second.
and roll call.
Reeves, aye.
Mitchell,
Vignani, aye.
Share I.
Kinsman, aye. Okay, thank you for watching the clock.
No, I was watching it, I was just
Oh.
gonna do
I was, okay,
Wanted to
we're
be
good.
In the middle of it.
Yeah. All right, so discuss the 2023 Boston Marathon and deadline to express interest by October 31st. Susan, do you, so you want to talk a little bit about the process and what people should do?
Sure. So we are accepting names. The best way to do it is to send me an email with your address, with your email address and expressing interest, and I will get back to everybody on November 1st. They will either be awarded an entry or they will be placed on a wait list, and I can let them know where on the wait list they are.
How many numbers do we have available, Susan?
We have 22, just like in the past.
Okay.
So we
But-
give 10
yeah, but-
to Nord, so we have 12
We
that
have-
go
okay,
to
so
the
we-
lottery.
So the process that you're gonna do is for 12 runners?
Correct.
Okay. And the amount that they have to fundraise?
$3,000.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks, Susan. So I don't think we need to take any action on it, but I think we're in a good place. Yep. Yep. The next item on the agenda is request from Roadway Traffic Safety Committee to discuss Ashland's bylaw 293-23, which prohibits parking on certain streets. I'll turn this over to Joe.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The reason that we asked to be put on the agenda, we've had some discussions about, and long discussions about the safety of the residents on certain streets. And come to find out, one of the issues that we had problems with was House Street and Holly Lane, especially during the summertime when the Hopkins State Park was at capacity and they shut the park down, and the overflow of traffic was parked. They were using House Street and Holly Lane and certain sections of Cross Street closer to that intersection, which is now a three-way stop. Unbeknown to all of us, and I'll take blame for not checking this, there is a bylaw. And I'm sure that a lot of residents out there do not realize that this bylaw, which Randy just mentioned, which is 293-23, is parking prohibited on certain streets. I would suggest that every resident that has a home on any of the streets in town that are listed, to look this up and see exactly if there's no parking on your street. Because there's a lot of places that don't have parking, current parking, on either side or one side or the other. And several years ago, we had a lengthy discussion about issues that were created on Chestnut Street because of parking. And the unfortunate thing is, Chestnut Street has no parking on either side of the road, from the Holliston Town Line all the way to Prospect Street. That whole discussion that we had, that we had many an issues with, could have been avoided very easily. The problem is the enforcement of these areas of the town, that the streets that don't have parking, they have to be posted. No parking. The parking clerk, who is now, it used to be Tara, is now Cindy, cannot enforce the officers that are citing these people that are parking on either House Street, Holly Lane, or whatever, especially over the summertime, because they were not properly posted. There's a fee that's attached to that, and that's putting up these signs. They're not, they don't come free. You have to get the post, you have to get, the sign itself, and it gets quite costly if you have to put 3 or 4 signs on a long road, which House Street is, especially by the state park, to do this. So I just wanted to bring that up, and I know at some point I was going to talk to Michael, to have a meeting, set up a meeting with him to see if we can get additional funding for the DPW, for Kevin Langmeyer to get these signs erected, because if the officers is going to be, if they're going to be citing these individuals, they won't be held responsible because of the fact that we don't have posted signs on any of these streets, for that matter. So just want to let you know, actually Front Street, now that we've got this beautiful, downtown area being worked on and everything. Front Street on both sides of the road. There's no parking on both sides. From Route 135 Union Street for a distance of 450 feet northerly, then from Front Street to Concord Street for a distance of 230 feet. That's Fountain Street. Go ahead.
Couple of comments. One is, looking at Chestnut Street,
Mm-hmm.
the both from Prospect Street to Holliston Street was amended in 9/20/2000, but then it was also repealed in 9/20/2000. So the idea that there's no parking on both sides of Chestnut Street, that whole section, is not true, because it says repealed. So it's really just the two Chestnut Streets that are on both sides with the specifics. My real point, though, is, can we get this on a map? Because the idea that, Chestnut Street from Union Street to a point 150 feet south, okay, where's the 150 feet end, right? If I'm going to park there, where is that? So if I'm,
Cemetery. But I'm just.
You know
right,
that,
Right, no,
but-
I'm just, right.
so that if someone wants to go and say, okay, I see this bylaw with all this no parking, well, how does that, if I live on, Elliott Street, okay, where's 200 feet west on Elliott Street?
Yeah.
Right? So if this could get translated to a map, I think.
That's,
Yeah.
it is confusing, you're
Right?
absolutely
It
right.
is-
You gotta remember, well,
confusing.
where's north,
So,
where's south?
My,
So,
my question is there
Definitely
any of these
enforcement.
streets where we should allow parking?
I was about to say, maybe the discussion is taking off in some of these.
Yeah, I mean, it
Well,
seems,
and that's fine. We'd be more than happy to do that. You direct us how you think we should do
so
this, and
just
we
an
would do it.
example, so we'll take Front Street, and as you're heading towards Fountain, towards Framingham, now, right now, it's just filled with staged material for the
Correct.
construction, but that whole section there is potential parking. It could be cleaned up and it could be utilized in some form. So, and if I read this correctly, there's no parking there.
There is no parking there.
Right.
You're right.
So that, to me, is an opportunity maybe to review whether we should allow it or not,
Yeah.
right?
So,
that's a good point.
yep. I have no problem with that. Neither does the Traffic Study Committee have a problem with that. They wanted to bring it to your attention because, again,
Yeah.
a lot of folks don't realize this, and some of us here don't.
I
You know.
think Yolanda hit it with having a map that shows
Yeah.
all of these sections where no
Yeah,
parking,
it
and then we
would
can.
be color
we can look at it
coordinated,
and
so
we
that
can
way you
say-
know what is what. No, that's
Yeah.
fine.
How,
Yep.
Rob, yeah, let me just ask, Rob, go ahead and
Yeah, Joe, thanks for this up, because I think you're right, it really needs to be looked at and overhauled. I have a couple, for example, I know a side street near a relative of mine that, we put no parking signs up. It's actually not on this list, but it keeps her from having large family events because literally there's no place to legally park anymore. So, I think it's good to look at this. I'll send you some specific information on that. But, I think it is a great idea to kind of go over these in detail and see what's necessary and what's not necessary and suggest changes. I would suggest that, as people said, we should be moving in two different directions. There's some places that there should be parking. And I think my suggestion for you is to kind of put together the criteria first. Why is it that we're going to not allow parking? And, safety, is it just safety, and what kind of safety? Are there other issues? I think you need to think about that clearly in terms of designations. So that would be my suggestion. And especially, let's make it consistent, but we should start with criteria because, why are we doing this? At various times, we've been involved in, somebody complained and we, said no parking, and, other people said, why can't I park there anymore? And what's the problem there? And it really wasn't a problem. You're just being nice to somebody who was complaining. So, let's have some strong criteria that, is kind of standard and consistent. That would be my suggestion.
One of the, Rob, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but one of the criteria that we look at when an issue comes up is line of sight.
Sure.
And that's a big issue. because we're trying to minimize accidents on any of these roads,
That's right.
so.
No, I
it-
agree. Just write that stuff down, have some guidance, so you can say
Yep.
what the deal is. So.
Yep, that's a good suggestion, and we do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I make a suggestion? Just, this is insane.
It is insane.
You know, 4 lines for Front Street, from Concord Street to a point 160 feet westerly, from Main Street to a point 100 feet east, 180 feet.
I think that all this was done during Rob's first tenure on the board.
But,
Give me something to do.
and this is, this is a project, but I would suggest maybe having DPW work with our traffic consultant over a period of time to maybe look at this, evaluate it, and come back with a recommendation for the board on how to clean this up or map this out. Does that?
Yeah,
I think that's a
Yeah.
great
Yeah.
idea.
absolutely.
Yeah.
This is, that's the right word, insane.
Yeah, I think we could, it'll take a little while, so it'll take a little while longer than the quick fix, but I think we'll get a better.
Yeah.
Sorry that it, opened up a can of
No.
worms.
No.
No, it's-
Pandora's
it's
box,
good.
Joe, you and
Yeah.
Pandora's
Yeah.
box.
I think it's one of those things where you and the Traffic Safety Committee have been looking at stuff, and now it's time to say, okay, now we need to bring it out to a broader audience and review more of this.
Yeah.
So, one thing I would suggest is as they're looking at it and we refine it, that we do create the map that shows people where you're allowed to, or where you're not allowed to park.
Yeah.
And then to the other point that Joe made, that we give DPW the funding to put the signs up, and then we give our police department the ability
ability.
to enforce the no parking, just like we've done on Olive Street.
Joe, is there any streets that aren't on that list that should be looked at too? Because if there's anything that, that's come to the Traffic Safety Committee that isn't there, we should add that to,
Yeah.
to what
As
they.
of right now, we're looking into that right now.
Okay.
Ooh, that hurt me.
Oh, I heard that.
Oh, I'm sorry. Oh, that-
I heard that
Sorry.
over here.
Oh, man,
It's my elbow.
never mind. Just kidding. Okay. Anyway, what's in my mind now? You get it.
Sorry.
That's all right. The other big key is, and it's something we will address later on, is crosswalks, and that's another thing. And that's getting funding to get the paint and put up the things that need to get done, because there are a lot more people walking, fewer sidewalks to utilize, and I know we're working on it, and Doug and Evan and the committee sat down, and we're going over it. But since that last meeting, we've had 2 requests for sidewalks. One of them was on West Union Street by the middle school. There are students that are on the opposite side of on the eastbound side that go to school there, and there is no sidewalks, and 2, they're walking all the way down, and they're trying to get to the mobile station because there's a better line of sight, and they run across the street because nobody stops them. So if we had a crosswalk there in that area, and there's about 7 or 8 kids that go to that school that are walking.
Where are they walking from?
Edwards Drive up in that area by the state park, coming down from there, and
So
several
if we put a crosswalk by the community center, which we've talked about,
Yeah,
they'd have to go up to come back, but they'd be able to do it safely.
yes, they would be.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, some of the things we're talking about really need to have a traffic engineer.
Oh,
look
yeah,
at 'em.
of course.
Without a doubt, Michael, believe me, we know that we're above our heads on this thing, but at least at some point, we bring it to the attention of those that think can get it done. And, Kevin, if he has the availability and the time to look at it, and again, it all goes down to line of sight, we'll put the crosswalk in just to make it easier for everyone.
So this
I just want to say we should have a sidewalk and pedestrian plan. That's the kind of, prioritize this
Well,
thing based
we
on-
had our complete streets plan, it has not
Yeah.
been updated recently, so it might be time, but again, it's time to, finding the time to do that, but.
Yeah, I think, I think about this retreat whenever we have it. I think this is gonna be, we've already talked about a number of new ideas tonight.
Right.
I think that'd be a good opportunity to prioritize
Yes.
some of
Yeah.
these things. I do
That's
think
why
we need
sooner
to
rather
start
than later.
Yeah.
getting
I
to
don't
the,
disagree. I don't
we're-
disagree.
and
I'm just-
I'll just say, we're gonna have to put some things to the side.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think what's good is that if we have a plan for it, we might not be able to get to it for a couple of years, but, if we have that on the list and we can communicate that out to people, they know that it's at least on our radar screen.
Yeah, definitely.
Sure. So thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing us to express that concern about some of the things that are around.
Well, thank you for bringing that to us. And, hopefully at some point we can make a much more condensed and sort of impactful parking issue, like resolve those parking issues.
Less insane.
Yes, less than
That's
insane.
insane.
Yeah.
That's a technical term for it.
That should be my motto. Less than insane.
That's our goal, make things less insane.
Yeah, okay. Moving on to our agenda, we already approved our consent agenda. We're moving on to priority project update. Michael?
Yeah. If you don't mind, I'm just gonna, we'll cross off Mendez and Warren District in the essence of time.
Okay.
And I'll try to be brief on the others. So downtown, we're working on the track crossing, jacking under the tracks. We finally got the license agreement from the MBTA. We're talking with GOCO about the mechanics of actually making that happen. That's probably work that's gonna happen over the winter. So, just so everybody knows, that's kind of the plan right now. We are still talking about trying to pave before the end of the year, but we would stop paving on Main Street before the tracks, and then basically finish that work over in the spring.
Mike, will that work be done on a weekend? I know there was discussion about it, so that way it doesn't interfere with,
Commuter roads.
commuter rail.
It'll be about a 12-day straight period, just based on all of the work.
Okay.
So, yeah. And there will be, traffic impacts and everything that we'll have to talk about.
Okay.
So, just give me a heads up on that. Jen, would you like to update everybody on the public safety building?
Sure. So we are obviously heading into the end of this project. They are planning to pave the front on Friday. They've removed that front construction fence, so it's starting to sort of look like the real site. We still have some outstanding issues that we're working on with the project team, including the delivery and installation of the bay doors. There is some issues with some of our security fire, just electrical work. And then we were really hopeful that Verizon was going to come today. It's been a really long process trying to get Verizon there for our internet connection, and really, most importantly, just in terms of timing to move in, a phone line, a dedicated phone line to the elevator. They were supposed to be there today. They did not come today, but we have confirmation that they will be there on Monday. And what we'll likely have to do is sort of work with the state inspectors to try to expedite the inspection for that elevator. And that's going to be sort of, I think, our next hurdle to really get this building fully complete and opened. So we have a committee meeting on Friday, and we also have a construction meeting on Thursday. So I'm hoping I'll have some answers to some of these outstanding issues.
Sounds good. Yeah, yeah.
Timing? What are we, a month, 2 months?
Timing, what?
Timing.
That we're looking at wrapping this up.
Well, it's, we.
Yeah, so it's going to be really driven on those two things. So we have some outstanding issues with installation of the doors that might increase lead time. Our furniture is being delivered. And then really it's going to be, I think, driven at this point when we can get an inspector out for the elevator. Because my understanding is our occupancy permit would be reliant on that. And so it right now, I don't have a good estimate.
Yeah.
Okay.
But fully occupied, it won't be until November because of the furniture delivery that we're waiting for, dormitory furniture.
Right.
Okay.
Is that in a big shape?
So Valentine project, we talked quite a bit already tonight about the barn. I think, one of the things, there's multiple components to the Valentine project. And one of those is also the conservation restriction. And, Brandy, I mean, I know you've had some discussions about the conservation restrictions.
Yeah,
but-
so last weekend I went out to the Valentine estate, and Carl Hackinson had given me kind of a tour and showed me around all the work that they've done, which is extensive, and it looks really great. So thank you to Carl and to Greg Wands and to Robin Hicks for literally moving mountains of stuff.
That's a lot of stuff.
But he had also said that he was willing to start working on the conservation restriction holder, because that was something that we have, that we need to start moving on. And so he had offered his services to be able to do that, and wanted to make sure before he did that the board was comfortable with that before he started to reach out to people. Yeah.
That reminds me, I have someone who reached out to me from Hopkinton,
Okay.
that they may have someone
Okay.
who could hold that.
Okay.
Interesting.
I'm gonna be following up with them,
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
so I'll let you know.
Absolutely. So, I think that is, certainly, we should be receptive to that
Yeah.
offer, I think. My only proviso, I guess, is relative to the work you and I did, presented to the board on the draft. And, I think the draft represents in essence, what the community was looking for potentially, and created a document that was broad enough to encompass many of those potentials. I would not want to see that diluted.
Okay.
So other than that, I mean, I think, clearly Carl, has much more of a network in that arena than I think any of us here do, so I would say, yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
But again, that would be my only proviso, my only concern is that we don't dilute that and,
And definitely not change anything unless that came back to us.
well, it's
for
gotta come back
discussion.
to us anyway, but, but again, that's, and that may not be the case,
Right.
I'm not saying it would or wouldn't.
And I would say that we're open to options,
Okay.
right? So that
Yep.
if we get something from Carl, but we get something from other people as well,
Sure.
that we compare everything.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, just, yeah.
Yep. Rob, is that something you're comfortable with?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Can I just add one thing? I think there might be a necessity, as Carl looks and speaks with some of these potential holders, that there might need to be some modifications with the conservation restriction to kind of mold it into a form that's acceptable to parties. So I think just giving him a little bit of leniency with that might be good. And then ultimately, it's going to be the board's decision, and you can accept it or
Yeah,
reject
I would
it.
say, and we were pretty consistent with explaining that we're not attorneys, so our language isn't necessarily gonna be appropriate legalese or maybe the correct language to use there. So by all means, I think if these things need to be modified for purposes, but again, I think the intent of the document, or the essence of it, I think we don't
Right.
wanna dilute.
I would agree.
Okay. All right, sounds good. That's all I had on that.
Okay, that's it.
Route 126 is not on here?
It is not. It's moving along.
Just, I have two questions. One, and again, I could be wrong. I'm seeing what I think look like regular width sidewalks going in. I thought we were, at least one side, there was some kind of multi-use path. And/or are we, if we're getting regular sidewalks, are they putting in bike lanes? And then the second question is, are we, and if necessary, I can reach out to Doug directly, the path on Route 126 into the Dyke Trail, that my understanding was the state was going to put the opening and a crosswalk there, so that when we do our trail, that would be already in place.
I do know that 126 was broken up into 3 sections.
Right.
And
But they're working on, from what I can see, they are working on the curbing and the sidewalks getting close to where the dike trail would be.
okay.
Let
Let me,
If we could just double check and make sure, like I said, I know the last plans that I looked at, but it's been probably a good year since I've looked at specific plans, that was still there.
Yeah, they were supposed to put, we're hoping for some sort of light at the crosswalk, right? Warning light.
Right.
Everybody driven through the roundabout?
multiple
Someone
times.
actually literally drove through the roundabout last week, like went straight. I'm like,
Yeah, they didn't want to do a roundabout. They wanted
how
to do a straight
do you
road.
drive straight through what's there? But
Well, there's no cure for, I'm not gonna say, but there's no cure for some things. And
Yep.
that's one of them.
Going back to Wanda's point about the sidewalks, Michael, what was the response? Because it does look like narrow sidewalks. And I was trying to remember where the bike paths and this special wide paths were supposed to be. So,
Well, there is a section that has narrower sidewalks than the rest
Right.
of it.
right, you think that's it.
So I think we just need to see where they
we
are
could just
vis-à-vis.
verify.
Probably the bog section.
Yeah.
There's bogs in
I think it was more the middle section, if I remember.
there. Really?
Yeah.
Closer towards Market Basket or
No.
near the wetlands.
Like,
near the wetlands?
yeah,
Okay, well, I call it bogs, I guess.
in like that Algonquin section,
Yeah.
near that.
Okay, if you could just check and let us know.
Well,
Thank you.
okay.
Town manager reports, do you have any?
Yeah, and I'll do a much abbreviated version. Just to give you an update, we're starting to do interviews for Human Resources Director. So we have interviews set up for this week. Hopefully, we didn't receive too many applications, but within those, there were some good candidates. So we're interviewing them, and hopefully we'll be able to make a decision soon. The DEI task force, so we've been continually meeting. We kind of weren't able to meet a lot over the summer, but what we would like to do is at our meeting, the first meeting in October, we'd like to come and present an update to the select board. Just give you a sense of where we are and what we've been doing. And then finally, at least for me, just want to let you know the Historical Commission met last night and they agreed to sponsor the demo delay bylaw. Lisa's had a couple of modifications, slight, that she's made. If you don't mind, I'm just going to send those directly to Helen and the Historical Commission. If they're on board, we can work with that version, if that works. And then, Jen, I don't know if you wanted to give an update on like human services and community programs like hoarding or the work that Anna's doing.
I can do it really quickly. So the community center continues to sort of work and bring back some of the programs that might have sort of just looked different over the pandemic. One of those things, I think, is the hoarding task force. So that work continued, but it was sort of done interdepartmentally and sort of with individual departments that were impacted or could help solve the issue. Jennifer has brought back the task force, which is really great. So we met for the second month. And really that includes, we have a contract with ClearPath, which is a company out of Marlboro, who has really an expertise in hoarding and sort of all of that. But it brings together the police, fire, our building commissioner is part of that, our health department and human services, and Donna Walsh from an animal perspective. And so we can sort of try to problem solve that on a monthly basis, because those are really complex cases that take a ton of resources. So I'm happy that that's back in person, because I think that's the most effective. And then Anna has been working with Candy and others at the community center, sort of expand some of the programs for seniors, and hopes to bring some of the younger senior population to the community center. And so she's hoping to continue to sort of bring those programs. She's had some success with some lifelong learning, really around international sort of history pieces and series that she's trying to make a series as opposed to a standalone, and some different types of musical, usually paired with lunch, and hopefully sort of bring that also for a series so that there'll be a regular, consistent kind of program that might be more interesting for some people who might not otherwise have come to the community center.
Good stuff.
Thanks, Jen.
Mm-hmm.
Is that it for board reports?
That's it.
Not board reports, I'm already
It could
looking
be
ahead.
it for board reports.
Is that
For
it for
town
town
manager
manager
reports,
reports?
yes.
Okay, thanks. So moving on to board reports. Rob, I'll start with you.
Okay, yeah, just quickly, we had the commuter rails committee, we had a presentation on regional rail electrification, so it was really quite exciting. I know we don't have time to talk about it, but basically, I think the short story is that I think the MBTA is really committed to rail electrification, and the basic way it's not coming to the Worcester-Framingham line until 2035 or so, because there's other work being done and there's some other pilot projects instead. But I think the basic thing you're going to see is that I think they call it something like intermittent electric, which, you know, instead of overhead lines, the trains will be on overhead lines for a certain distance, but then charge enough to be, you know, without lines and be on battery power. So they're not ordering any more diesel locomotives. There won't be any new ones ordered. It's all going to be electric batteries, and, you know, the technology is just moving along. So we're going to see, hopefully within our lifetime, within the next 20 years, I think, significant commuter rail electrification. So that's a story on that. So anyway, that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thanks. Thanks, Rob. Joe, you want to go ahead?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks, Rob. Couple of quick things. We have Affordable Housing Trust meeting coming up next week, and we're going to be working to see if we can get some verbiage for the inclusionary zoning bylaw. Get that kicked off the ground, sooner the better, for all these other projects that are coming down the road that we're losing benefits as a result of it.
Sorry,
So,
Joe, I can't hear you. I'm sorry.
I did that purposely, Rob. I'm only kidding, Rob. We're working on trying to get the inclusionary zoning wording done, so that way we can present it to the board, and hopefully we can get some work done on it and get it passed sooner than later. You know, with the townspeople. Other thing is, I'm sorry?
How about the Simpson property?
That's been, we actually have a project that we will be presenting hopefully within the next month or so, with respect to that. You know, so that's if the town allows us to do it. Secondly, we have our public safety meeting on Friday. Things are looking good over there. I know that some of the fencing is down, which I was kind of surprised seeing that we don't have some of the doors up yet, so, and closed. So I was a little concerned about that, but at the same token, it's starting to look like a location that we can be proud of. And we'll be working on getting an open house and dedication ceremony sooner than later. And lastly, it would, if I don't say it, then I'll be in the doghouse for the entire year. So tomorrow's my wife's birthday, so happy birthday, Donna.
Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Donna.
Hey, Donna.
And that's all I have, Madam Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, thanks, Joe. Yolanda?
Two things. We had a Mendez building meeting last week. Things are moving forward there as well. There's more concrete in different places. They're looking at getting some exterior stuff. There was some issues when we had the really bad rain, but that has been resolved, but it's moving forward. And we're having some issues trying to pull in some materials because of timing. So they're looking at some changes, but it's all moving forward. The other thing I have is tomorrow morning, I have my starting of the fall Metro West Regional Collaborative meeting from 8 to 9:30 via Zoom. So if people still want to hop on, you can register for that. And I will be bringing to that meeting the discussion of a letter of support for the maintenance of our Ashland train station as one of the items. So,
Good.
Thank you.
yep. And that's all I have.
All right. Steve?
So, again, just a couple things, and related to the community center, I wanted to acknowledge Candy Wilson, who took over for Joanne Duffy, started this past Monday, her first official week on the job, and I'm sure it's going to take a little time to get used to the community center crowd, but, you know, I think it'll work out. I think it'll be, I think she'll work out fine. Second thing related to the community center is the Lions Senior Breakfast for October is scheduled for Thursday, October the 6th. And that service starts at 9 o'clock. And the menu has not been selected yet, but it's a full breakfast for $1 is what we charge. So it's a good deal. And then the last thing I have is I was the unofficial representative of the select board at the Metro West K-9 5K this past Sunday. And I did us proud. And I beat my personal record getting around the course. And, you know, I had to drag Otis along with me, but he managed to make it. So it was a good time was had by all, so.
And a good nap, I'm sure, for Otis afterwards.
For Otis and Dad.
Yeah.
Can I just add one thing, because I thought Steve was gonna mention it, there's also the senior social coming up, I think it's October 11th, it's at the senior
That's
center.
right, yeah.
Again, sponsored by the Lions, so if people are interested, they can sign up for that as well.
Yep, good.
Okay, all right, is that it?
That's it, thanks.
Okay. So I just have a couple of quick things. One, I was curious if, and we don't have to, like, you know what, I'm actually not gonna talk about it tonight. I'm tired, I'm really tired, I don't wanna get into a long discussion about things. So the only thing I'm gonna add is, that, I'm working with Jack Lewis, our state rep, Jack Lewis, and he's working with Senate President Karen Spilka on scheduling. They're gonna plan to come at some point before the end of the year. So I told him, I gave him our October dates, and then I said, once we discuss November, December, I'll give those to you too. So, so that's in the works. And then, once Yolanda has her MA, regional collaborative meeting, so I'm hoping we'll have a letter drafted for board review for our next meeting. So, and that is it. So, with that, I'll ask for a motion to adjourn.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So we are adjourning at 10:37, and our next meeting is October 12th. So we will see everybody then. Thank you all for hanging with us, and have a good night.
Celebrate, have good Jewish
Good night.
holidays.
Yep.
Good night.
Thank
Night,
you.
everyone.
Good night.
Jen, see you Friday.